This guy had tried everything. Everyone laughed at him for choosing the gunslinger class, considered the worst of them all, but little did they know it was actually a legendary class. Before awakening though, his past life was complete trash. His sister was erased right in front of him, while Liu Yi couldn't do a thing. The bullies glared at him and threw his sister to the ground. He could only cry, unable to even stand up. At that moment, a sword pierced his back. The men laughed as they kicked him and his sister, calling them weaklings. Liu Yi kept breathing, regretting his entire life. His greatest dream had been to protect his sister, but he never imagined that the game Yuan World would become reality, and every player would gain the powers they had in the game. But since he hadn't played much, he was stuck with a weak character. Even so, he was a Chad driven by fury. He wouldn't let those bastards laugh at his sister's death. Liu Yi stood up screaming and slammed the sword into that bastard's head. Only then did he fall to the ground, content to die in peace. But something happened after that. He woke up in his bed 3 years before the game became reality. Liu Yi sat up abruptly, unable to believe what was happening. He clearly remembered being killed. Looking around, he didn't recognize where he was until he realized it was his old apartment, where he had lived 3 years ago. Suddenly, the door opened, and a female voice echoed through the room. Liu Yi froze, unable to believe his eyes. In the hallway stood his sister, holding a box that contained the access key for the game Yuan World. With a trembling voice, he asked what year it was. Liu Yun, surprised by the question, joked that he seemed to have woken up in a bad mood and said the year was 2030. That hit him hard. Liu Ye stood motionless, unable to believe what he was hearing. Getting up quickly, he ran to the window. With his mouth agape, he realized he had returned to the exact day the game Yuan World first went live. Without hesitation, he hugged his sister tightly and promised himself that this time, he wouldn't let them die. He would become the strongest player, as long as this wasn't all just a dream. It was July 27th, 2030. The virtual reality game Yuan World was launched, and on September 1st, it took control of the world. All players received the abilities of their in-game characters. The marginalized and the lower classes of society suddenly acquired incredible powers. For the first time, they felt a strength they never imagined they could possess. Because of this, chaos erupted, and endless wars for money and power began. Our protagonist chose the path of a player who simply explored the game's world. This led him to a tragic fate. Due to his low level, he ended up dying in Yuan World. However, by some miracle, he had an unexpected stroke of luck. He was reborn and returned 3 years in time, to the exact moment the game was about to be released. This time, he was determined to become the strongest. Mentally, he returned to reality and was surprised when his sister pushed him away. Without realizing it, he had started to hug her. She was extremely embarrassed, thinking her brother was just messing with her. Scratching his head, he gave an awkward smile and said, surprised, that it really did seem like that. We fast forward 8 hours to the launch of Yuan World. Our protagonist put on his virtual reality headset and lay down on his bed. He knew there were only 34 days left before the game would dominate the world. If he could become the strongest player in that time, he and his sister wouldn't die. Upon entering the game, he appeared in the starting plaza, where several players were already gathered. In the center, an administrator was about to demonstrate the power of the ability called Strength. The first strike he delivered was simple, cutting a large rock only halfway through. However, by focusing his energy, he delivered another attack with a single move, splitting the rock in two as if it were butter. The demonstration deeply surprised Liu Ye, who watched with his mouth wide open. After the training ended, the system transported our protagonist directly into the game. At the spawn point, several players looked around, dazzled by this new world. But Liu Ye had only one focus: to level up as quickly as possible. He decided to choose the Strength ability, as it was considered the most mysterious and determined the difference between a common player and a true warrior. Without wasting any time, he set off in search of the training pavilion. In the world of Yuan World, there were no fixed combat classes, only a division based on the weapons used. Knowing this, Liu Ye wanted to master a weapon as quickly as possible, as the foundation of power lay in its mastery. Once he reached 100% proficiency with a weapon, he would have complete mastery over the Strength ability. With this sense of urgency, he hurried to the weapons pavilion, worried that all the training areas would be crowded. However, to his surprise, when he entered the place, he realized it was completely empty. Liu Ye didn't care. He was determined to achieve his goal. He went straight to the weapon rack and began his selection. The katana was his favorite weapon, so he decided to start with it. But he knew he had to test all the available options. After 5 intense hours of training, he was exhausted. Even so, he managed to completely master the use of the katana, making it his primary weapon. Despite his fatigue, he knew he had no time to lose. Without hesitation, he picked up a longsword and began a new training cycle, pushing himself to the limit and ignoring his own exhaustion. In the weapons pavilion, a couple walked through the corridors, admiring how realistic everything around them was. Suddenly, the girl noticed a training pavilion behind the guy. Curious about the sounds coming from inside, she asked what could be in there. The guy looked up, saw the sign above the entrance, and commented that it was probably a training area. Without hesitating, the girl peeked around the corner of the door. It was then that she spotted our protagonist, training tirelessly with a sword, honing his strikes against a wooden dummy. She noticed that Liu Ye was the only one training there, which seemed quite strange to her. The couple approached the weapon rack but didn't pick up any weapons. They first wanted to understand how the training worked. They watched for a few minutes, then threw the weapons on the ground, saying it was a boring activity reserved for losers. As they were leaving, the guy explained that the training pavilion was only for increasing weapon proficiency and offered no other advantages. He even emphasized that reaching 100% proficiency required at least 10,000 strikes. The girl suggested they leave immediately and invest that time in leveling up. The guy agreed instantly. Before leaving, the girl glanced back at Liu Ye one more time. For some reason, he was etched into her memory. Liu Ye, for his part, didn't even notice anyone had been there. He struck relentlessly, showing no intention of resting. On the first day, he completely mastered the katana and the halberd, but his long-awaited special ability wasn't granted. On the second day, he reached maximum mastery with the spear, axe, shield, and hammer. Still, his power did not awaken. On the third day, while other players had already reached levels 10 to 20, Liu Ye was still at level 1, and his strength remained hidden. For a moment, he considered that maybe he should level up before continuing to train, but he quickly dismissed the thought. If he wanted to become the strongest player, he had to obtain his ability at any cost. Nothing would stop him. Once again, the scene shifts to the street near the training pavilion. The same couple was walking by, discussing the fact that a player had died. The penalty in UN World was cruel. Upon death, a player lost all their experience levels. In the middle of their conversation, the girl spotted Liu Ye again and was incredibly surprised. He was still training. The guy next to her was also shocked. He said there were many more exciting ways to play, far better than spending days training non-stop. The intrigued girl couldn't understand why Liu Ye was so persistent. Her friend suggested that maybe he knew some hidden secret. Excited, he thought about trying to master a weapon too. However, the girl shot down his idea. She claimed it was useless, as Liu Ye had already been training for 3 whole days, and nothing had changed. While other players were reaching level 20, he was just honing his weapon skills. He wouldn't stand a chance of winning that way. Liu Ye, however, completely ignored the couple. He had a goal and wouldn't waste time on distractions. The girl grew irritated with his obsession. She said Liu Ye seemed like a gaming addict, and that even if he did become the strongest fighter, she would never try weapon training. To her, the time was better spent leveling up. With no patience to stay there any longer, she pulled her friend's arm and insisted they leave. They needed to gain more experience as soon as possible. Days later, our protagonist received an unexpected notification. He had mastered 18 types of weapons, and as a result, earned the title of Weapon Master. Now he was able to use the abilities and characteristics of the other 17 weapons with any main weapon he chose. With a whip in his hands, he was exhausted and stood motionless, processing the message before his eyes. He couldn't understand what was happening. He had mastered every possible melee weapon, but his long-awaited special ability never manifested. Because of this, he decided to ditch bladed weapons. Perhaps his true talent lay with firearms. Without wasting time, he headed to the firearms pavilion. As he walked, he reflected on something curious. In his previous life, he had never encountered a player who used power with firearms. Upon entering the pavilion, an impressive hall was revealed before him. There was an immense variety of weapons arranged on metal racks. Without hesitation, Liu Ye chose a pistol. The days were passing quickly. More than 5 days had gone by, and he was certain that other players had already reached level 30. Meanwhile, he was still at level 1. Looking at the huge selection of weapons, Liu Ye felt a tightness in his chest. There were too many options, and because of that, UN World might take over the world before he could master them all. For a moment, he questioned if it was worth continuing, but then, the memory of his sister's death came rushing back with full force. That level 20 player who killed her, the blood boiled in his veins. He had no choice. He couldn't turn back. Without power, he would never become the strongest player. Taking a deep breath, he raised the pistol and began his training. Even if his destiny was to die again, he would never give up. Meanwhile, at the training pavilion, the girl who had previously mocked Liu Ye's dedication decided to come back and check on his progress. However, when she looked inside, she found no one. Surprised, She thought he had given up and left for good. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the area. The thunderous sound made her freeze in place. What was that? Instinctively, she followed the noise and went up the stairs toward the firearms pavilion. Peeking around the corner of the door, she was dumbfounded. Liu Ye had stopped shooting. The reason? He had completely destroyed the training target. Around him, a strange greenish aura flickered, as if his very existence was changing. The girl covered her mouth with her hands, stifling a scream. Her eyes reflected pure horror. What on earth was happening to him? Liu Ye, for his part, remained paralyzed. He wasn't looking at anything, as if he were lost in a void. But in reality, he was reading the notification he had been waiting for so long. The message read, "Congratulations, you have reached 100% mastery with the pistol. As a reward, you have acquired a new ability." A shiver ran down Liu Ye's spine. He had finally received his power. Now, for the first time, he felt prepared for the impending disaster. A faint laugh escaped his lips. The next step was clear: level up and catch up to the other players. His stats were basic: strength, 5 agility, 5 endurance, 5 intelligence, 5 senses, 5. The only exception was his special resistance, which had only 1 point. Additionally, a new passive skills icon had appeared, but it was empty. Heading for the exit, Liu Ye was ready to start leveling up. However, as he reached the door, he noticed a girl standing in the hallway. She tried to act natural, looking away and casually whistling a tune, pretending she hadn't seen anything. Liu Ye, however, didn't waste time trying to figure out if she had seen something or not. He simply walked right past her, as if she wasn't there. The girl, in turn, felt strangely embarrassed. A wave of irritation washed over her, and she didn't understand why she was so flustered. She wanted to ask what had happened inside the pavilion, wanted to understand the strange aura she saw around Liu Ye, but she hesitated. In the end, she remained silent. Upon leaving the training pavilion, Liu Ye had an insight. Only a weapon truly suited to the player could grant power. With this in mind, he decided to go to the equipment shop. He needed to buy a pistol, ammunition, and a close combat weapon. On the way, he heard rumors about Yuan World. The most relevant piece of information was that the game had reached the milestone of 10 million online players. This only confirmed his concern. Time was passing way too quickly. Arriving at the shop, Liu Ye chose his gear. He acquired a low-level pistol called the White Dragon, which cost 500 coins. He also bought a box of 300 common bullets for 300 coins and a low-level dagger that cost him 200 coins. In total, he spent 1,000 coins on his new acquisitions. As he left the shop, he felt a bit discouraged. The prices were too high, and the fact that the in-game currency had a value equivalent to real money made everything even more expensive. To him, the company behind Yuan World had gone overboard with the item prices. Still, he was satisfied with his new weapons. Looking at the dagger, an idea struck him. Without hesitation, he activated his special skill, Weapons Master. This skill allowed him to overcome the limitations of weapons and apply the powers of one to another. The first real test of his new power was about to begin. Determined to test his skills, Liu Ye went to the Mirror Kingdom Gaming Company. This place allowed players to create a mirrored copy of themselves to fight against. The rules were simple. If a player managed to defeat their copy, they would receive extra money and experience. However, there were 2 conditions to participate. The player needed to be at least 5 levels below their copy and also pay 10% of their gold to enter the fight. For Liu Ye, these conditions weren't a problem. In fact, it was the perfect scenario for him. He was still at level 1, but now he possessed real power. As he walked through the Mirror Kingdom's hall, a cry of frustration echoed through the room. 2 players emerged from the respawn point, complaining about the extreme difficulty of the mirrored copies. They seemed to have lost everything they had earned. Nearby, 2 other players watched the scene with irony. They mocked the defeated players and, upon noticing Liu Ye, turned their attention to him. One of them, seeing the pistol holstered at the boy's waist, laughed with contempt. To him, it was the worst possible choice of weapon in the game. The other also showed disdain, convinced that Liu Ye was just an inexperienced newbie, delusional to think he could win with such inferior gear. Liu Ye remained silent, just observing the players. They had no idea what he was capable of now. Liu Ye, after confirming his decision, mentally prepared for his first battle in the Mirror Kingdom. He knew that due to his lack of experience, the odds were against him. However, he also understood that he had no choice but to fight. He accessed the system menu to familiarize himself with the interface. After browsing for a moment, another notification appeared, asking for confirmation to face a mirror player. Despite his fear, Liu Ye confirmed his participation. aware of the consequences. The system then displayed a notification requesting confirmation for the 100-coin participation fee. After accepting, a second notification appeared, reminding him that once inside the Mirror Kingdom, players could not leave until the battle was over. A few moments later, Liu Ye found himself transported to the arena. His opponent was a player, ready for combat. The countdown began, and the battle was set to start in 10 seconds. When the countdown reached the 5-second mark, Liu Ye's nerves got the best of him. He had never fought anyone of his own free will, and the fear of confrontation was overwhelming. His leg began to shake involuntarily, distracting him even more. Trying to calm himself, he tapped his leg a few times. However, this distraction caused him to miss the start of the battle. His opponent, wielding a red sword, charged immediately. Liu Ye thought it was all over before it even began, but to his surprise, he managed to dodge the first strike and tried to shoot at the enemy. Unfortunately, all his bullets missed the target, and as he lost his balance, he nearly fell. The enemy kept advancing and, taking advantage of Liu Ye's instability, disarmed him with ease. Now, weaponless, Liu Ye had to face the red sword with only his physical strength. The enemy seemed certain of his victory. Yet, in that moment of doubt, Liu Ye realized he couldn't give up. This was his second chance at life, and he wasn't going to lose it. He activated his Master Archer skill, which allowed him to modify the blade's properties. With the increased strength of the blade, Liu Ye easily blocked the sword's strike. The blade's enhanced power allowed him to counterattack with a strength he didn't know he possessed. With skill and precision, he cut through the enemy's sword, rendering it useless, and then quickly defeated him. Despite the victory, Liu Ye was still shaking with nerves. His hands were trembling, and his breathing was heavy, a reaction he couldn't control. He felt a wave of frustration at not being able to calm down after this win. Meanwhile, a few minutes earlier, 2 other players were walking through the arena, discussing their plans to gather members for their teams. They talked about how hard it was to win battles in the Mirror Kingdom, especially with the large clans competing against smaller teams. As Liu Ye celebrated his victory, the 2 players who had been watching him were stunned by the outcome. They couldn't believe that a level 1 player with minimal gear had managed to defeat an opponent 5 levels higher. In reality, the 2 players weren't looking for allies. They were betting money on other players, hoping to make a profit. One of them quickly checked the betting odds on a site called Backstage Garden, eager to see how much they'd win from their bets. The other, meanwhile, carefully analyzed Liu Ye's movements, intrigued by how such a low-level player could beat his opponent. Liu Ye watched his opponent's strikes closely as the countdown to the battle continued. The green-haired guy watched Liu Ye's every move, saying the answer had arrived. The second player commented that it was an excellent choice, never taking his eyes off Liu Ye. Both were eager to see which mirror copy Liu Ye would choose, hoping they could place their bets. Liu Ye checked his own stats. He had leveled up to 5 and his attributes had doubled, but he still felt weak. He realized he needed to get stronger to overcome his fear of battle. If he didn't, he would soon die. With determination, he immediately chose his next opponent, a mirror copy ranked 55th, known as Strikes. The system teleported him to the arena almost instantly. The 2 guys watching Liu Ye were waiting to bet on his fight, but they were confused when they saw who his opponent was. They were shocked when they realized Liu Ye had chosen a level 10 mirror copy nicknamed Strikes. The green-haired guy snapped back to reality, realizing Liu Ye had picked the strongest possible opponent out of hundreds of other level 10s. He wondered what would happen to their bet, hoping it hadn't been registered, but the white-haired guy revealed the bet had already been placed, and there was nothing they could do. He hoped that if they lost, his green-haired friend wouldn't tell anyone about the bet, as he didn't want to be embarrassed. The bookmaker then announced the odds for the fight, showing the bets placed on Liu Ye and Strikes. Seeing the odds, the 2 guys were disheartened. The total bets on a Strikes victory exceeded 200,000, and they had lost all hope. At that moment, Strikes appeared before Liu Ye. Strikes, holding a katana, was equipped with the Persistent Fighter set. Meanwhile, Liu Ye, a level 5 player, only had a pistol, a dagger, and basic gear. The countdown to the battle began, and as soon as Liu Ye saw his opponent, his legs started shaking again. This enraged him. To stop the shaking, he plunged the dagger into one of his legs. With only 2 seconds left before the battle started, he took a fighting stance, determined not to repeat the mistakes of his first fight. When the battle began, Liu Ye wasted no time and immediately rushed toward Strikes, skillfully dodging his attacks. Although Liu Ye's pistol was powerful, his aim wasn't the best, and Strikes managed to dodge or block most of the shots. After a few moments, Strikes grew tired of this and quickly disarmed Liu Ye. Without hesitation, Strikes went in for a fatal blow. It seemed like the blow would be impossible to dodge, But Liu Ye wasn't ready to give up. He activated his special ability and his eyes glowed blue. Liu Ye made an incredible forward leap, narrowly dodging Strikes' deadly blow. After sliding back a bit, he realized Strikes wasn't chasing him. With a moment to recover, Liu Ye assessed the situation. His health was at 20 out of 100, and his cognitive power was at 28 out of 30. The battle had just begun, but Liu Ye was focused on his survival. Liu Ye was one step away from defeat. His normal attacks couldn't even scratch his opponent, and he realized he had chosen an adversary he couldn't defeat. He should have opted for a weaker fighter and used that time to level up instead of going so far so fast. But even so, after a moment of doubt, Liu Ye returned to his fighting stance, finding it almost funny how hard this was. He believed that to overcome his fear, he needed to keep fighting without giving up. Considering that standing still wasn't a good option, he decided to run straight toward his enemy. At one point, the hero turned to the side to avoid a mortal blow that would have surely depleted all his health. However, Liu Ye underestimated his opponent's speed. In seconds, Strikes was behind him, taking him by surprise. Liu Ye realized he had no chance of winning, so he decided to risk it all. Before the fatal blow, he turned to face Strikes, drew his pistol, and fired. In a final clash, they both exchanged fatal blows. Strikes' katana sliced Liu Ye in half, while the shot from Liu Ye's pistol destroyed Strikes' head. The system determined that Liu Ye dealt the fatal damage faster than Strikes, and so he was declared the winner. His reward was a large amount of experience, money, and a level up. Now, Liu Ye was much stronger. At level 13. All his attributes increased to 17, except for endurance, which only went up by 1 point. He let out a sigh of relief, realizing he had been on the verge of death and yet had won that incredible battle. Many other notifications arrived, the most important being that he had reached level 10. Now his Rebirth ability had evolved into the capacity to choose his development path. Meanwhile, the two guys who had bet on Liu Ye's victory were surrounded by a crowd and pushed against the wall. Those who lost the bet had to hand over all their money to the other participants. One of the guys was on the verge of tears, asking if they could just give half the money instead of all of it. But the one-eyed gang pointed at them and said that wasn't an option, and they couldn't get out of this loss so easily. The white-haired guy couldn't take it anymore, and yelled that he couldn't believe they really thought they had already won when the result wasn't even final yet. Gang, pointing at the board, stated confidently that Strikes would win, since he couldn't possibly lose to a rookie. If that happened, he was ready to cause a huge scene with the bets. Before Gang said that, Strikes was considered one of the top level 10 copies. However, moments later, the board updated, and everyone was shocked to see that Strikes had been defeated. The surrounding crowd could hardly believe it, their mouths hanging open in shock. Their world instantly fell apart. The green-haired guy was beaming, thrilled with the win, and the two friends were happy they had won. Meanwhile, Liu Ye, the protagonist, was returning victorious from the arena. A list suddenly appeared before him. He looked at it for the first time and didn't fully understand what it meant, but he decided to finish the match. As he was logging out, his sister came into his room and called him to eat. Upon entering the kitchen, Liu Ye wasted no time and started eating immediately. His sister Yun said she had prepared his favorite mushrooms, but Liu Ye paid no attention to her words. He was too immersed in his thoughts about Yuan World, where he had discovered 2 new skills he didn't even know he had. The first skill was Invasion Flame, which offered an incredible effect. The damage per second dropped from 50 to 25, but the total damage was about 250 health points. Besides his skills, Liu Ye also thought about the dangers posed by his opponents and considered the idea of forming his own team. After eating quickly, he thanked his sister and headed to his room. This surprised her, as he had barely eaten a single plate. It even hurt her a little, and she thought that he would need to find someone else to cook for him. Now we return to Yuan World, in the Mirror World's buildings. A man was at Gang Zi's feet, begging him to let him keep half the money, as he had proposed. However, the man wasn't so simple. He kept pleading, saying that all the money he bet on Strikes' victory wasn't his, but his family's. If he lost it all, he would probably be severely punished. Gang Zi, still mocking him, said that just a minute ago he had refused such an offer, and now he was making the same one. Before he could finish speaking, a red-haired guy appeared and slammed Gang Zi's head against the wall, telling him he had to return all the money lost in the bet against Strikes. The red-haired guy's name was Jack, and he was from the New Order Guild, which was in charge of the Mirror World. Gang was pushed against the wall, trying to explain that the one who beat Strikes had nothing to do with him. He had only placed the bet, and didn't know Liu Ye would choose the Strikes copy to defeat. But what Gang said didn't concern Jack in the slightest. Jack replied that, in the end, the white-haired guy was the one who profited, and even if he managed to escape responsibility here, things would be handled differently in the real world. Gang tried his best to defend himself and, to avoid being bothered in real life, offered all the money he had won from the bet. Jack, however, suddenly refused and said he didn't need it, letting the poor man go. Gang thought for a moment and, with a very serious expression, said he had nothing else to offer as compensation. Jack, with a frightening look, simply mentioned a favor Gang would have to do for him. And of course, he had no choice but to agree. Now, let's get back to our hero, who logged back into the game after dinner to continue leveling up. He knew he couldn't hesitate, because he needed to be well prepared for Judgment Day. Soon, Liu Ye received a notification confirming his choice to upgrade the Kai Heal skill. Without hesitation, he confirmed the enhancement and immediately received 3 notifications. The first was about the skill he had chosen. The second informed him that his tally was complete, and his combat power was now 15.6. Additionally, he received a new title called Low-Level Warrior. One of the biggest surprises for Liu Ye was realizing that by choosing the skill, he had acquired a dual attribute, and several of his stats had increased considerably. Looking at his stats, he was very surprised, as some of his attributes had risen significantly. Liu Ye recalled becoming very weak after surpassing level 100. Now, he realized that even though he was only level 13, his new traits and bonuses put him on par with a level 26 character. Liu Ye began to reflect on the possibility of defeating a level 20 Strikes with his current strength. However, Liu Ye transformed from an insecure guy into someone confident, determined to challenge Strikes. He now saw him as a worthy opponent and wanted to test his strength against him. Then, a notification appeared before him, asking for confirmation for the battle with Strikes, which he promptly accepted. A few seconds after he chose his opponent, bets for the fight started popping up in the local bookmakers and in the player chat. Someone placed a bet, and 2 guys, who Jack had asked to spread the word, started promoting it. One of them bet everything he had on the protagonist's victory, which angered the golden-haired man. They didn't need to place bets, but the white-haired young man was convinced that Jack couldn't do anything now. Even if he tried, he wouldn't get support from his group, the New Order. The blonde guy noticed his friend's disdainful smile and figured that this Jack character had forced him to publicize the odds in favor of the protagonist. However, he didn't understand the point of it all, since it was obvious no one would bet on Liu Ye, and the odds would be very low. But the guy didn't answer, as his only job was to stir up trouble. The scene shifted to the battle arena inside the Mirrored Realm, where the combat was about to begin in 10 seconds. On one side, Strikes, level 20, armed with 2 katanas and advanced armor. On the other, Liu Ye, level 13, with only a pistol, a dagger, and starter gear. Liu Ye began to ponder, thinking that with enough cognitive power reserve, he could predict the right moment to destroy Strikes easily. The system announced the start of the battle. The protagonist didn't hesitate and attacked immediately. Strikes managed to defend herself with her katanas, deflecting all the bullets. While attacking, Liu Ye tried to get closer and closer, parrying the blows. He realized that the double attributes had practically eliminated the strength difference between them, which boosted his confidence. Now, battles with high-level opponents wouldn't be as intense as they were at the beginning. Dodging from side to side, Liu Ye used only his pistol and reflected on how much stronger he had become. He allowed the enemy to get close enough to attack with her daggers and aimed for Strikes' head, planning to finish the fight in the final seconds. With a smile on his face, he was about to kill his opponent and end the combat. Strikes, on the other hand, couldn't believe that a weak, low-level player was able to attack her. She was paralyzed, unable to react. The moment Liu Ye saw his opponent's face, he became confused and didn't know what to do, canceling the pistol shot. Since the hero had slowed Strikes down, there was enough time for a counterattack. However, after dodging, Liu Ye jumped back, avoiding any damage. Suddenly, he was overcome with a wave of anger as he remembered his opponent, freezing his action and clutching his head, unsure of how to proceed. He didn't understand why he hadn't shot. He thought about the fact that he was scared, that he simply feared death. Looking at his opponent and his weapon, the young man thought he would never be able to take his destiny into his own hands. More importantly, he thought he would never grow up and would continue to fear everyone in his path. Gripping the gun tighter, he understood his future was being decided right there. And his opponent, the girl, also understood that only one winner would emerge from this battle, and that the protagonist's destiny was at stake. Taking an impressive leap towards Strikes, they both decided to clash head-on. Strikes landed the first blow, which should have cut off our hero's head, but Liu Ye managed to dodge, moving quickly behind her. Then he grabbed her by the head, aimed the gun, and in that moment, his thoughts were clear. He had already grown up, become a completely different person. Without hesitating for a second, Liu Ye fired, and 3 notifications immediately appeared before him. The first said he had defeated Strikes, the second that his level had increased, and the third that he had reached level 20, now able to choose how to further develop his power. The protagonist's face was incredibly serious. He understood that he had not only grown, but was now ahead of all the other players. Meanwhile, in the lobby, those who had bet on our hero couldn't believe what they were seeing. They had actually won. Then, unexpectedly, the green-haired guy commented that the bets didn't affect the other players. Even though Jack had opened a second bet on a level 20 strikes, she still lost to Liu Ye. Now, everyone knew how strong he was. The same guy started to think that after defeating the level 20 strikes, Liu Ye had probably reached level 22 or even 23. He concluded that Liu Ye could only fight against level 30 mirror copies, whose rewards were very high. The hero knew it was strikes, but the guy couldn't understand how Liu Ye was so confident he could defeat a level 30 mirror copy of strikes with 100% certainty. They assumed that as soon as the protagonist faced the level 30 strikes, he would probably lose and be in great danger. As soon as Liu Ye teleported back to the mirrored realm, he realized he had not only grown, but had also pulled ahead of the other players. Looking at the tournament board, he saw a level 30 mirror copy of strikes, holding the first place spot. If in previous battles Liu Ye had managed to prove to himself that he was stronger than the other players, now he needed to destroy the level 30 mirror copy of strikes, as most players claimed she was invincible. Before he entered the battle, rumors started circulating around the protagonist. They said one of the players had reset his account to get revenge on the level 30 strikes, but in the end, he still lost. The titles of Invincible Copy and Strongest Fighter were given to Strikes for a reason. More importantly, he heard that thanks to this copy, the New Order Guild had become the strongest because of Strikes. After that, Liu Ye didn't hesitate to summon the system before him. He had a murderous look in his eyes, eager for the fight with Strikes. The system asked again if Liu Ye really wanted to enter the battle against the level 30 mirror copy of Strikes. Of course, he didn't hesitate, and the system immediately transferred him. Jack, watching Liu Ye from a distance, ordered all his subordinates to open bets on Strike's victory. The scene shifts to two guys. One of them places a bet on the protagonist's victory, which makes the green-haired man lose his patience. He thought that Liu Ye simply had no chance against the level 30 Strikes. However, the white-haired guy ignored him, insisting that he believed in Liu Ye. Soon, we're brought to the arena where his enemy, the level 30 Strikes, was waiting. He wielded a very unusual weapon, a katana named Last Will, and his gear was called Fierce. Liu Ye, on the other hand, was only level 23. He had a pistol, a common dagger, and beginner's gear, making it look like he stood no chance at all. After a moment, a notification popped up for Liu Ye. It informed him that his intelligence stat had surpassed 100 points, increasing his intelligence knowledge power by +1. Focused on the notifications, Liu Ye didn't realize the battle had started. Strikes wasted no time and attacked immediately, dealing 411 damage to Liu Ye's health. Liu Ye was shocked, as he only had 18 health left, and he couldn't believe Strikes' speed. The second attack should have finished Liu Ye off, but somehow, he managed to block with his dagger and survive. With each passing second, Liu Ye grew more frustrated with his opponent as he realized just how serious this fight was. If he had blocked a second later, he would have died with no time to heal. With great difficulty, he parried the attack and dodged back, simultaneously firing his pistol at Strikes. Each bullet flew with stunning accuracy. Liu Ye didn't want to drag out the fight and tried to end it as quickly as possible. However, all his attempts to land a hit were futile. Strikes dodged them easily, as if everything was moving in slow motion for him. In a single move, Strikes closed the distance, ready to end the fight with one blow. Liu Ye was caught off guard. To his surprise, Strikes barely flinched at the dagger attack and still managed to land a blow, forcing Liu Ye to constantly heal himself. Liu Ye couldn't block the attack. If he hadn't reacted in that split second, it would have been game over for him. However, he recovered just in time, ducking and sidestepping Strikes' attack. Liu Ye immediately put some distance between them and tried again to hit Strikes with his pistol. Suddenly, Liu Ye was lost in thought. He realized that even though his own stats were comparable to a level 46 player, Strikes was still able to pressure him. But as he composed himself, Liu Ye knew he wasn't ready to give up. He realized that if this was the extent of Strikes' power, he could deal massive damage in just a few seconds and secure the win. It was then that Liu Ye decided to use the skill Study of Blessing. This skill boosted all of the target's stats and activated a unique state that lasted for 1 minute. Liu Ye also studied the curse, which could cause one of 10 effects, like weakness, aging, lethargy, stupidity, fatigue, poisoning, hallucinations, perception changes, chaos, and madness. After learning the skill, a notification appeared. confirming that the blessing had been acquired. His combat power was 15, but more importantly, his stats multiplied, giving him a huge advantage over Strikes. Liu Ye didn't hesitate. He shouted to activate the blessing, knowing he wasn't high level enough to beat Strikes, but trusting that his stats would be enough. Moments later, a notification appeared. It informed him that he had spent 400 cognitive power points, and that all his stats increased by 200 for exactly 1 minute, after which they would return to normal. A white aura began to surround Liu Ye, projecting an aura of terror to everyone before him. It was this aura that gave him courage, as he knew that by activating the skill for a full minute, he would have enough power to destroy Strikes. Caught off guard, Strikes froze, bracing for the protagonist's next move, but he quickly decided to take the initiative. He charged forward at full speed, intending to finish Liu Ye once and for all so he wouldn't have to face him again. Liu Ye thought for a moment. Once he defeated Strikes, everyone would know he was hiding incredible skills and abilities. He'd be hailed as the strongest player. But snapping back to reality, Liu Ye saw the enemy closing in fast as he dodged from side to side. But his dodging wasn't enough to avoid Strikes, who was already close enough to attack, so Liu Ye aimed his pistol and fired. The first bullet hit Strikes in the chest, making him halt his attack in confusion. After the first shot, Liu Ye didn't stop. He relentlessly kept firing at his enemy. A few seconds later, over 10 bullet holes were visible on Strikes' body. It looked like he should have fallen, but suddenly, he was completely unharmed and ready to keep fighting. With a smile on his face, the enemy seemed to understand what was happening. While reloading, Strikes realized the protagonist's stats were much higher than players of the same level. On top of that, he had passive skills that activated at critical moments. That was the true strength of Strikes. Besides that, the Mirrored Kingdom system worked against NEP players, making victories even harder to achieve. Liu Ye understood he was a complete exception, and so he took a fighting stance. With his buff's duration about to run out, he knew he had to finish Strikes before it ended. Determined to end it before his time ran out, Liu Ye began to attack Strikes. Only 25 seconds of the skill's duration remained. As he attacked, he knew he couldn't lose. His current goal was to overcome his past and take control of his destiny, something he had failed to do before. With each new attack, Strikes closed in on the protagonist. With 15 seconds left, Liu Ye jumped back and launched a counterattack. With time running out, Liu Ye attacked and parried Strikes' blows, giving the enemy no time to rest. Just seconds before the skill ended, a bullet hit Strikes directly in the forehead, shattering his armor. Strikes began to tremble violently, and his weapon fell from his hands. He stopped attacking. A moment later, completely drained of strength, he collapsed, showing clear signs that he was dead. The system notification began to dissolve. The enemy's body lay on the ground. Liu Ye stared at it, unable to believe he had defeated the most powerful opponent in the Mirrored World instance. He could already imagine the comments about his victory. They would call him the strongest player, the one who managed to defeat a level 30 enemy, the mighty Strikes. Furthermore, his hidden skills were incredible, granting him the qualities of an invincible warrior. Someone commented that such titles meant nothing to level 30 players, as they belonged to completely different worlds in terms of strength. To illustrate, one of the spectators explained that a level 30 player was, at best, like the ground beneath the protagonist's feet, meaning they could never reach his level. The protagonist's imagination sent his self-esteem soaring, lifting his spirits even higher after the victory against Strikes. Then, several notifications popped up on his interface. The first one congratulated him on his victory against Strikes, while the second informed him of his huge reward in both money and experience. He could barely contain his happiness. Not only had he gained money and experience, but he had also overcome a great fear. Just then, the system teleported him back to the Mirrored Kingdom. In the waiting room, Jack had watched the battle and couldn't believe that Liu Ye had defeated the strongest copy in the Mirrored Kingdom. What infuriated him most, however, was the money he lost betting on Strikes to win. Meanwhile, two players who had bet on the protagonist were euphoric. They jumped for joy, and a white-haired young man smiled at the stones around him, saying he was right about Liu Ye and that his bet had paid off. He then suggested that from now on, everyone should always follow their instincts. However, his friend grabbed his arm and warned that it was too early to celebrate, as many things could still happen. He advised that they both log off from the game and, in real life, move to another apartment to avoid being found by Jack. The scene shifts to the real world, in the protagonist's house. He is sitting on his bed, silently reflecting on his victory against Strikes, the game's strongest copy. Suddenly, The door opens. A girl appears from another room and remarks that he must be hungry, inviting him to get something to eat. However, he had other plans. With a smile on his face, he said the two of them were going out for a walk and that he would take her out for some barbecue. As they walked down the stairs, the girl asked her brother where he had gotten the money, since restaurants were expensive for them. Laughing, he replied that she wouldn't believe it. He had won a large sum of money in the game, and because of that, they needed to celebrate their good fortune. His sister accepted without question and didn't ask for more details. The next day, still at the protagonist's house, he made an online purchase. After completing the transaction, he received a confirmation that the order would arrive in 2 months. Sitting at the table, he couldn't believe it. In just 24 days, Yen World was supposed to take over the real world, making those 2 months far too long to wait. Still, he had no choice, as the nearest store he checked was out of stock. Instead of letting it get him down, he gathered his determination and decided he needed to work even harder while waiting. The scene then shifts, and we see 2 girls walking along the waterfront. They were extremely embarrassed, as all the passers-by were staring at them. The best friend suddenly decided to ask Yun why Liu Ye had asked the girl out on a date. Thoughts began to flood her mind, and she feared that something terrible had happened. Yun, however, kept a beaming smile from ear to ear and remained silent for a while, lost in thought. She was imagining how she would introduce her brother to her friend, as that was her real goal. After all, the girl was incredibly attractive, came from a good family, and most importantly, had a wonderful character. If she became her brother's fiancé, Yun would have nothing more to worry about. A moment later, snapping back to reality, Yun smiled and replied that her brother missed her a lot, which is why he wanted to see her. Without much expression, her friend asked where she had been lately, since she hadn't even been responding in the work group chat. Yun started to suspect her friend might have a boyfriend, but even if that were true, she wouldn't give up on her plans. She was firmly decided that the date with Liu Ye would happen. Nian, sighing, adjusted her cap and said she didn't even know how to explain. Suddenly, the girl shouted loudly, revealing that her parents were forcing her to play an incredible online game. Yun was confused by the unexpected answer and didn't know what to say. Meanwhile, we are transported to a local bar. Jack, consumed by rage, forcefully struck a red-haired girl he had called over to try and calm him down. The blow was brutal, and the girl fell to the floor, hitting it hard. Even as she lay injured, struggling to stay conscious, Jack continued to attack her. He hated the way she tried to calm him, feeling that she pitied him, something he despised. A crowd began to gather, outraged by what they were witnessing, but no one had the courage to intervene. After all, this wasn't the first time Jack had acted this way. Noticing the stares from the people around him, he grew even more irritated and asked what they were whispering about. However, no one answered. On the contrary, one by one, they all began to disperse, running in opposite directions to avoid the same fate as the girl on the floor. Jack, still unsatisfied, spat on the girl before grabbing his phone when he heard someone call him friend. He answered the call immediately and asked if the person on the other end had found the protagonist's address. The answer was no, but the person claimed to have a plan. Jack listened intently and, without hesitation, asked if the plan was truly foolproof. When he heard that success was 100% guaranteed, his expression changed. His furious eyes made it clear that he craved revenge against Liu Yi and wouldn't stop until he got it. With a voice laced with malice, Jack said that as soon as they found the guy, he would send the rest of the money immediately. The conversation ended, and the scene shifts to Liu Ye, who had just logged into the game. He was standing in front of the Mirrored Kingdom's building, reflecting on the max level of the mirror copies, which was level 30. He understood that at his current level, he couldn't level up there anymore, as the enemies were too weak for him. Given this, he decided it was time to leave. Turning around, he started walking towards the ruined kingdom, a place where he could grow even stronger. However, as he stopped to look at his own appearance, he realized he couldn't keep wearing his starter armor. It was time to think about buying a new set. Liu Ye headed to a weapon shop. As he approached the display window, a system window opened before him, showing the items available for purchase. However, when he saw the prices, he froze for a few seconds. His expression made it clear he simply couldn't afford to spend that much on armor. Disappointed, he left the shop and continued walking through the Mirrored Kingdom. He soon realized there was no reason to stay, as it was impossible to get the materials needed to craft equipment in that place. So, he decided to go to the Ruined Kingdom, where he could easily get this material and craft level 20 equipment. Although he had enough money to buy level 20 equipment directly, he preferred not to rush. After all, he would soon reach level 30. And besides, he also needed to manage his money in the real world. Without wasting any time, he set off for the Ruined Kingdom. There, he intended to join a team, knowing it would speed up his progress and help him get equipment faster. Upon arriving, he saw many teams recruiting players to explore dungeons of different levels. Some were accepting level 20 players, while others were only looking for level 30 players for more difficult raids. He stood aside for a moment and overheard two players talking about a new guild order. They mentioned a recent raid on the level 40 Chaos dungeon. 10 players participated, but they were all defeated and had their stats reset. Liu Ye knew there were only 4 restrictions for completing a dungeon, regardless of the number of team members. In fact, the more people who participated, the greater the reward at the end. However, there was a crucial detail. Once inside the dungeon, there was no way out until it was completed. Furthermore, in Yuan World, dying in the ruined kingdom meant a total reset and the loss of all equipment. For this reason, teams were extremely selective when recruiting new members. With the skills he possessed, Liu Ye believed he would be accepted without any problem. Convinced, he approached the first recruiter, but was immediately rejected, as the team only accepted level 30 players. He tried again with another group, but was turned down because of his low-quality gear. On his third try, he didn't even get a chance to speak, as the team was already full and didn't need any new players. Frustrated and utterly disappointed, he fell to his knees. He couldn't believe that no one wanted him, even after he had defeated Strikes, a level 30 enemy. He thought his strength should be taken into account, regardless of his level and gear, as he had already proven he wasn't a weak player. Discouraged, he started considering grinding the easier dungeons for basic gear, but he knew it would be a long and tedious process. Still, he gathered the strength to get up and was preparing to follow this only option when he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. Right after, a voice announced that a team needed one more member. Curious, Liu Ye turned to see what it was about, not understanding who the offer was for. Before him stood Jack, smiling. With a calculating look, Jack suggested he join their expedition into a dangerous level 35 dungeon designed for 10-player teams. Exchanging glances with Jack, Liu Ye sensed that something was off about the proposal. Still, Jack kept talking, assuring him that the team was strong enough to handle the challenges on their own. They just needed one more person to complete the party. To activate the raid portal, they needed one more player. Surprised, the protagonist couldn't believe what he was seeing. He also felt like he'd seen Jack somewhere before, but he couldn't remember exactly where. Jack didn't give Liu Ye time to think. He said if he wasn't interested, he'd find someone else. Not wanting to miss this chance, Liu Ye immediately cut him off and accepted the offer. Jack just waved his hand and told him to follow. Together, they went to the entrance of the level 30 portal, which was designed for a group of 10 players. When they arrived at the meeting point near the ruined royal portal, they found a crowd. The surrounding players wore impressive armor, leading many to comment on the leader's unexpected choice. No one expected him to recruit a rookie armed with just a simple pistol. Liu Ye observed the other players and quickly realized they were very well equipped. Their purple gear indicated that more than half the team had equipment of timeless rarity. He held his head, thinking, and wondered if he could steal at least some of their gear. Suddenly, one of the players shouted that since everyone was gathered, they should leave immediately. He wanted to reach level 40 as quickly as possible. A bald man approached with a smile and said that upon reaching level 40, they'd need to change their equipment, and if that were the case, he could give his old gear to the group. However, the player just smiled and refused, unless someone would buff his weapon with 3 rare items from their inventory, which no one accepted. The group then started moving toward the portal, with Liu Ye following slowly behind them. Watching the players, he noticed they all seemed to know each other well. He didn't understand why they had called him for this level 35 mission. However, noticing the team's malicious smiles, he realized this friendship hid ulterior motives. The portal finally opened, revealing a vast desert expanse. In the center of the landscape, there was only a mysterious crystal. Jack and another player were the first to cross through the portal and began to survey the area. Soon, one of the team members noticed that the mission objective was to protect the crystal. Jack immediately took command, ordering everyone to surround the crystal and ensure its safety. Everyone followed the instruction, except for Liu Ye, who hesitated for a moment. That's when Jack warned that anyone who let the monsters reach the crystal would have to pay for the damages out of their own pocket. Liu Ye was surprised by the team's organization, though he didn't show it. Still in no hurry to get into position, he observed the crystal carefully. Suddenly, a notification appeared before his eyes. The mission was loading. A few seconds later, another message informed him that the task was to protect the crystal for 3 waves of enemies. At the bottom of the screen, he saw the crystal's health bar and the penalty for failure, death for all players. Just then, a shout interrupted his thoughts. Someone announced that the monsters were attacking. Liu Ye looked out at the desert, but he saw nothing but a dense fog. However, He soon realized this was no ordinary fog. It had been generated by the monsters themselves. From within the smoke screen, an enemy emerged at high speed. The creature looked like a spider, but it had absurdly large fangs. The bald man yelled at Liu Ye to get closer to the crystal, warning that if he didn't follow orders, he could be killed. Without arguing, the protagonist obeyed. Meanwhile, a swarm of monstrous insects flew toward the bald man, who was holding an immense axe. It looked like his game was about to end right there, but the man had entirely different plans for this raid. With a single swing of his axe, he destroyed several beetles at once. He watched the others, who were also wiping out large beetles as if they were ants, and realized their teamwork was top-notch. The protagonist understood that this group knew exactly what they were doing. He felt useless in that battle and realized he didn't need to try so hard, as he might just get in the way. Jack was destroying the monsters one by one until he suddenly stopped and gave a serious look to his sword-wielding ally. With just a glance from Jack, the ally understood he needed to let one of the monsters get past him to the protagonist. Without hesitation, he allowed the first enemy that attacked him to pass, pretending he didn't have time to kill it. The spider-like creature advanced toward the protagonist, aiming to destroy the crystal. However, the young man didn't hesitate. With a smile on his face, he heard the others yelling for him to protect the crystal, saying they'd let a monster slip by. It only took him a few seconds to defeat the enemy. At that moment, he thought that even though they worked well together, their strength was only that of an average player. They weren't even close to the copy of Strike he had defeated. A notification then popped up, informing them they had protected the crystal from the first of 3 waves. The next one would arrive in 10 minutes. After finishing off all the monsters, they sat down to rest. One of them commented on how skilled the protagonist was. At first glance, no one would guess he was a master, since few could defeat a monster 10 levels higher with beginner's gear. The swordsman who had let the monster slip by was blaming himself for his mistake. If the 10th member of the group hadn't suddenly vanished, there wouldn't have been a gap in their defense. The bald man reassured him, telling him not to worry since the problem had been solved. He then turned to the protagonist and told him that in the next wave, he would have to fight alongside them on defense to ensure no monsters got through. The young man sitting next to Liu Ye suggested they invite the protagonist to join the team so he could get noticed. He then asked the protagonist what he thought about joining their group. That way, he wouldn't have to look for people to form his own party. Besides, by playing together, they could take on high-level challenges. The protagonist really liked the offer and even considered accepting it on the spot. Right after he agreed, the man in black armor asked Jack what he thought about Liu Ye joining them. Jack smiled and replied that he didn't mind him joining the group, but there were some conditions. New members had to provide their phone number and real-world address. This was to protect them from situations like the one they had faced before. Hearing this, the protagonist was confused. He didn't say anything, just kept listening. Jack began to talk about how hard it had been to get that gear, and in the end, Sam had taken it all for himself. That's why they were now having trouble with the monsters. If Liu Ye wanted to join them, he would have to accept these conditions. The protagonist grew thoughtful. He understood the situation perfectly, even though no one had spelled it out for him. After these words, Jack and his allies flashed malicious smiles that were hard to ignore. This made Liu Ye even more suspicious. They said their goal was to invite him on the raid, and for a few seconds, everyone froze, unsure of what to do. Quickly, Liu Ye stood up and scanned the large number of mid-level players in the hall. Realizing this was clearly no coincidence, they had chosen him intentionally. As soon as they entered the raid, they acted friendly toward him. Then, they deliberately let the monster pass to find out what the protagonist's true power was. Finally, they invited him to join the team permanently. With a smile, Liu Ye concluded that based on everything that had happened, they were trying to get information on his real-world address. Looking at Jack, who was radiating intense anger, the protagonist didn't stop talking. He suggested that Jack was probably the one in charge of the New Order Guild's Mirror Realm. Before joining them, he had overheard the same 2 guys talking about the New Order Guild. They mentioned the guild had the real address of a 20-year-old guy who could defeat strikes. Ever since then, no one had seen that guy again. The young man, smiling, said he was flattered that his efforts were being recognized, especially for defeating level 30 strikes. With this, the protagonist realized that Jack had gathered everyone here to find out his real address and then deal with him. Jack, trying to hide his true colors, claimed the protagonist must have him confused with someone else. With his weapon in hand, the protagonist stated that he never actually wanted to join their team. He was just thinking about earning some money and experience with such a strong team on a raid. However, seeing their intentions, he realized he shouldn't pretend anymore. After all, they were enemies, and enemies should be eliminated. Jack stood up, glaring at the protagonist with a terrifying look as his entire team surrounded him. Then he began to speak, mocking the idea that Liu Ye thought he could defeat 9 players, all 10 levels higher than him. One of the group members attacked the protagonist from behind, shouting that he was shameless. At that moment, a notification appeared before Liu Ye. It stated that he had spent 30 power points to increase his next attack by 1500 damage, leaving him with 414 power points and 450 cognition. In the next instant, the sword-wielding attacker fell dead, thrown several feet forward. Everyone couldn't believe what they were seeing. In a single blow, he had killed an opponent 10 levels stronger than him. Those surrounding him were stunned. No one expected a man to instantly defeat someone so much stronger than himself. Something started happening to the dead character's body. It began to glow with an intense blue light, as if it were absorbing something and transforming into another substance. After the transformation, a strange sphere appeared before the protagonist. It was called a blue military pearl. Note, military pearls drop when a player is defeated. There's a chance to receive a random item from the dead player's equipment or backpack. The protagonist picked up the sphere and with a serious expression asked, "What's so impossible about defeating 9 players?" Jack, furious, was ready to tear him apart, believing the young man was being overly confident. Jack then ordered everyone to attack the protagonist at once. They all charged forward, trying to defeat him as quickly as possible. Unfortunately for them, the young man no longer knew mercy. A few seconds later, the first girl fell. Just like the man with the hole in his head, the protagonist killed them one by one. He knew that by killing these enemies, he was taking away their chance to survive. But unfortunately, he had no other choice. He couldn't die here. His sister wouldn't be able to get the players' identities, so no matter what they said, he had to get stronger. With his current strength, he wouldn't be able to protect his sister when Unveiled took over their world. The protagonist decided he needed to rise to the top, but first, he had to eliminate those who might stand in his way in the future. Therefore, to achieve his goal, Liu Ye decided to walk over the mountain of bodies piling up around him. Jack and his entire squad were paralyzed, wondering why they couldn't kill him. After all, their levels were much higher than the protagonist's, and their gear was better. The young man was extremely irritated, though he had already guessed the protagonist was strong. All of Jack's allies tried to persuade the protagonist to stop. They believed that if he killed any more of them, they wouldn't be able to clear the dungeons and would lose all their resources. The protagonist replied that it didn't matter to him, as he could simply go to the secret mirror zone and do the same thing. Whatever he lost, he could recover in a single day. But for them, the situation was different. Their equipment would be lost, and they lacked the strength to defeat the Mirror Realm characters. Jack grew even more irritated and said he could gather people to stop the protagonist from entering the secret mirror zone, but Liu Ye just laughed in response. Then he started killing Jack's allies, something Jack himself couldn't believe. Jack wanted to order them to avoid more deaths, but before he could even speak, 2 players behind him were already dead. As his allies were defeated, Jack remembered a time when he had greeted an important person who told him they had to remain the top players in Unveiled. If they managed to maintain that position, it wouldn't matter what they did to achieve it, because he would support them. However, looking at them, he added that if they failed, he would not only stop supporting them, but also expose all their crimes, ensuring they were punished immediately. When Jack came to his senses, he realized everyone around him was dead. Only he remained. Liu Ye prepared to finish Jack off, but he knelt and began to beg for mercy, pleading for the protagonist not to kill him. The young man didn't answer, just stared at him with a serious expression, which only made Jack even more furious. He felt so pathetic that it disgusted him. Jack said that if he were spared, he would reveal the secret about Unveiled. Liu Ye smiled and told him to speak immediately, without holding back. Jack asked the protagonist to promise he would kill him right after he spoke, but he was sent flying several meters back. Liu Ye said that since Jack didn't want to talk, perhaps it was better for him to go to the next world, as he didn't really want to know the secret anymore. Jack landed a few meters away from Liu Ye, but he didn't disappear or turn into pearls on impact. He managed to survive the blow and tried to get up, trembling, which surprised the protagonist. Liu Ye was impressed by Jack's resilience, wondering how he had managed to survive a direct attack. Suddenly, he heard a noise coming from the far end of the desert, and immediately deduced that a second wave was about to begin. To start, Jack said that Liu Ye must know some of Unveiled secrets, otherwise he couldn't have become so strong. What surprised Jack the most was that even he couldn't handle Liu Ye. Because of this, he planned to report all of this to his superiors. After that, Liu Ye wouldn't just have to deal with Jack, but would likely die and be sent back to level 1. Getting to his feet, Jack continued, asking if the protagonist really thought he could stand up to people stronger than him, like Jack. That was impossible. since very few people could level up that way. When the secret Liu Ye seemed to know became useless, Jack was sure he would no longer have an advantage. The man began to beg again, asking the protagonist to let him go. In exchange, he would reveal his secret, and together, they could use Liu Ye's incredible strength to clear the rest of the dungeon. Liu Ye smiled and asked why he thought he would die and be unable to clear the dungeon by himself. Jack couldn't believe the protagonist's words. He was only level 28, and no matter how strong he was, everyone has their limits. Or so Jack believed. But suddenly, the protagonist asked, "What if I had level 56 gear? It wouldn't be hard for me to clear a level 35 dungeon, would it?" Jack couldn't believe Liu Ye's words. The protagonist held 2 pearls in his hands and asked if this was, by any chance, the gear he wasn't supposed to have. Looking closer, Jack saw the blue orb in the man's hands. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The surprise on his face was unmistakable. With a confident and determined smile, the protagonist shouted for the blue orb to open and release its equipment. In an instant, the protagonist appeared, dressed in yellow and black armor. He wore a frost tank top that gave him incredible buffs, and it was also purple ranked. A purple ranked rapid combat suit protected his entire body, offering resistance, strength, agility, and armor, requiring level 30. The combat gloves provided the same attributes, with more focus on sensation, but the strength stat was removed. Violet-ranked high-speed combat boots granted the protagonist impressive agility. The most important item was the purple-ranked beam katana, which gave Liu Ye a 160 attack power bonus and also increased his defense by 30. Now, the hero possessed incredible stats, and based on combat calculations, he had the skills of a level 46. With a smile on his face, he remarked that he should thank the men who had just died at his hands, as he had gotten free equipment from them. Now, with this gear, his combat abilities had more than tripled, showing that his opponents were truly incapable of seizing opportunities to defeat him. Jack was completely stunned. He couldn't believe that Liu Ye had increased his stats nearly 3-fold. Moments later, he realized that everything was starting to irritate him. The surprise turned into rage and hatred. He started shouting that no matter how much stronger the hero had become, he wouldn't be able to clear the dungeon alone. It was simply impossible. Around them, the sounds of monsters approached with incredible speed. Then, one of the monsters leaped onto the crystal. The heroes killed anyone that approached without even blinking. After killing one ant, several more appeared. Hundreds of ants attacked from behind, trying to kill him and reset his level. Liu Ye wasn't going to give up so easily. One by one, he killed the ants, giving them no chance to win. Liu Ye knew that if he didn't win, he couldn't protect his sister. Thanks to the pearl's effect, he didn't need to use his intellect to eliminate the insects attacking him from all sides. He was ready to bravely defend the crystal, despite enemies coming from every direction. His life was on the line, and he needed to secure this victory. He defeated the ants one after another. The number of corpses just kept piling up, but it seemed endless. When Liu Ye's health dropped to almost 0, he used a healing spell, allowing him to continue the battle without losing strength. Meanwhile, Jack managed to kill a few ants. He noticed the protagonist's health was low, but to his surprise, he healed quickly. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. He thought Liu Ye was using rare potions and yelled that it didn't matter. Jack believed he just needed to dodge and he could outlast Liu Ye. Liu Ye paid no attention to Jack, focused on killing the creatures surrounding him. Jack kept screaming that he would pay for his arrogance, but Liu Ye just smiled and told Jack to worry about his own survival. He said he could easily destroy the monsters and handle the situation, so even if Jack begged for mercy, it wouldn't save him. These words angered Jack even more. He couldn't believe that even in such a desperate situation, Liu Ye was so confident and bold with his statements. Staying alert, Jack noticed an ant trying to attack him from the side and killed it instantly. Meanwhile, Liu Ye continued to eliminate an impressive number of monsters. His health was again reduced to a minimum, but he used his healing ability once more, continuing his fight tirelessly. Hours passed as he killed ants. There was no hesitation in his eyes, only a field of corpses around him, but the creatures never stopped attacking the crystal. Jack, on the side, watched the massive number of dead monsters and couldn't believe his eyes. He thought it was impossible for Liu Ye to have so many healing potions, as the amount he had used was far greater than any player could carry for such a test. As Jack stared at the pile of bodies, he didn't notice a monster suddenly appear, grabbing his hand and dealing heavy damage. His health dropped to a minimum again. He wanted to use a healing potion quickly, but when he opened his inventory, he saw it was empty. He was bewildered, realizing this was the end. His health was at rock bottom, and enemies were closing in from all sides. He had no strength left to keep fighting. The monster started tearing him apart, attacking him relentlessly, wounding every part of his body it could. Even in such a desperate situation, Jack couldn't accept that he would die first and not get to see Liu Ye die before him. But looking over at the hero, he realized Liu Ye was still handling all the enemies, killing them without much trouble. He decided Liu Ye would pay for this insolence once he respawned in the lobby. The young man watched everything with a smile because he wasn't tired at all and still had plenty of strength. He even enjoyed facing all the monsters that attacked him. After all, that's how he gained experience and combat skills. At that moment, Jack was sent to the lobby, his level nullified. A notification appeared on the protagonist's screen, indicating that his team had only one person left: himself. By meeting all the conditions, the reward for completing the dungeon would be increased tenfold. After several hours of fighting the insects, the hero crouched on the ground, exhausted, trying to catch his breath. An impressive number of defeated ants lay around him, all eliminated by him, and finally the wave of attacks ceased. The insects stopped attacking, and looking at the mountain of bodies, he felt relieved, knowing that the ants would disappear before the second wave. If that didn't happen, he wouldn't know where the crystal was and wouldn't be able to protect it. Not far from him, he saw the inscription, Golden Orb. The Golden Orb allowed a player to receive 3 random items from a dead player's inventory. As soon as he saw the orb, Liu Ye quickly stood up with a smile on his face. He couldn't believe he had actually found the Golden Orb, as he'd expected from the manager of the mirror copy. Finally, he had done something right. Approaching the Golden Orb, the protagonist picked it up and thought for a moment, knowing he didn't have much mental energy left. He would have about 10 minutes to rest, which would restore half his strength. Naturally, this wouldn't be enough for him, as he was on the third and final wave. Now he realized he shouldn't have attacked the Zhukovs so early. He should have waited for the final wave. Now, all he could do was hope the Golden Orb would yield something valuable to help him face the last wave. As he spoke the words to open the Golden Orb, a notification appeared before him, offering a choice between equipment and items. Liu Ye started to reason logically, thinking that his strength, agility, and armor would soon reach 100 points. He wondered if he could get equipment that would improve these 3 stats and increase his combat ability. Therefore, he selected the equipment option. Immediately, a notification popped up saying the system was opening the orb and the equipment would be retrieved. He received a set of purple and gray amber equipment, which gave him 10 agility and 5 senses. The exact same second ring fell into the protagonist's right hand. The third item he got was a purple class pendulum pistol, which gave him 200 strength, 30 wisdom, and a locking ability. Plus, it could triple the damage of each attack or stun the target. The pistol also had an automatic reload, but it took a full minute to recharge completely. Liu Ye was in a state of shock, unable to believe what he was seeing. To him, this was simply incredible. He believed this was his lucky day, as he not only received buffs for all his gear, but also upgraded his main weapon. Accessing his stats, the protagonist noticed that 4 of them had surpassed 100 points, which made him very happy. This meant his combat ability was stronger than ever. After thinking for a moment, Liu Ye realized that if it weren't for those who attacked him, he wouldn't have become so strong. So he decided to thank them. The protagonist thanked them with a smile on his face. He was ready to enter battle, knowing he was only behind in terms of his level. But as soon as he protected the crystal in this dungeon, he would catch up to the top players. Now, we shift to the city at night, where we find ourselves in a room where players are revived after death. Jack was in the middle of the room, talking to his boss, head bowed, saying that Liu Ye definitely had some kind of secret that allowed him to have stats exceeding his level. After everything that happened, Jack claimed that if this weren't true, he wouldn't have died at the protagonist's hands. He told the boss that even if he didn't believe it, he should know about the complexity of the Ruined Kingdom dungeon. A level 28 player clearing a level 35 dungeon alone was too much, and there was definitely something wrong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill everyone. The boss, looking at Jack with a scornful gaze, said he was giving him one more chance. Within a few days, he needed to level up, and the boss would deal with Liu Ye personally by sending others to handle him. Jack thanked the leader for giving him another chance, and said he would try. Now we're transported back to reality, to an unknown cafe, where Yun was yelling at Neon because her whole family was playing the game. The girl said they weren't just playing, but also making a lot of money, which left Yun very surprised. Neon had a hard time understanding why, but her parents forced her to level up with them every day. She was already tired of it, and didn't want to do it anymore. Although her parents wanted Neon to keep playing, she wanted to do it her own way. Suddenly, the girl stood up and asked Yun why she and her brother didn't play that calculation game with her at her house, adding that it would be fun to play with her brother. Yun was very surprised by the proposal. Besides, she didn't have a device to play on, but she suddenly realized this was her chance to get Nian and her brother together, because if they played together, it would be a success. All she needed to do was leave the house under some pretext and leave them alone. This was her incredibly cunning plan, so she suggested they go to her house. Now we're back with the protagonist, who was starting to face the third wave advancing on him. He defeated his opponents one after another. Liu Ye had never felt so much power before. As he equipped the gear, he could feel every cell in his body growing stronger, especially when he exerted himself. He felt as if the blade in his hands was even lighter. His steps grew faster, more agile. His jumps were so high they allowed him to tower over all the creatures around him. In these moments, he felt incredibly majestic, standing out from the horde. Liu Yi spots something that grabs his attention. It's a creature that even confuses him slightly, but he doesn't look away for even a second. He decides to unleash his strongest attack, leaping down and wiping out an entire horde of ants with a single strike. But that wasn't enough for him. He wanted more. More power, more experience, more skills. And most importantly, as he destroyed the ants, he wanted to reach places he had previously only been able to gaze upon. Then, just as he was high above all the monsters, the same creature he'd noticed before appears in front of him. It was a level 35 spider boss. Without hesitation, the protagonist decides to finish it off right then and there. Suddenly, notifications start to appear before Liu Ye. The character was congratulated for clearing the dungeon and received his rewards. He gained an impressive amount of experience, 360,000 points, which was then multiplied by 10. In addition, the character received the title Dungeon Defender. For each ally lost in the dungeon, the player's stats increased by 10%. Now, his stats were incredibly high. Upon reaching level 36, he had an immense amount of experience, and his stats, like damage, defense, resistance, strength, agility, endurance, intelligence, perception, distributable points, health, and cognitive power were astonishing. Upon reaching level 30, he was able to choose a skill branch. One option was Silence, an active skill that, when used, reset all skill cooldowns by 5 seconds. The cost was 50 cognitive power points, and with each level increase, the skill added 1 second. The second development option was called Captivity, which tethered the enemy to its initial spot for 10 seconds. After defeating the monster, the character sat down, satisfied, and couldn't believe he had defeated a huge monster all by himself. Most importantly, he was very happy to have gotten so much stronger in just a few hours, something he himself couldn't believe. Now, we shift to the real world, at the protagonist's home, moving from the virtual to reality. Liu Ye stepped out onto the balcony for some fresh air. He thought about his actions. Incredibly proud of his recent achievements, he was just waiting for the opportunity to get into the game to make his sister as strong as him so she could protect herself in the future. Suddenly, Liu Ye heard a door close behind him. When he entered the room, he saw his sister was home. She was in the hallway, holding a gaming device. She said it was very difficult to get the device, but she was lucky to have a wonderful friend, Nian, who helped her get it. However, the device caused her to lose connection. His sister walked into the room, and someone followed her. For a few seconds, Liu Ye was in a state of shock, unable to believe his sister had gotten a device to enter Yuan world. But then, his expression changed. He became incredibly happy because now she could play with him. With a huge smile on her face, Yun said that since Nian got the device for her, she needed to be properly thanked, and so, Nian would be living with them. Nian greeted Liu Ye without hesitation. He, in turn, still couldn't believe it was a real device for Yuan World. It was incredible. However, his sister felt ignored at that moment and was very annoyed. Liu Ye picked up the box and started asking how they got the device. Not that it really mattered to him. The important thing was that he had the device now. His sister grimaced. She couldn't believe her brother was ignoring the beautiful girl beside him, focused on his new toy instead, especially since he knew Nian was going to be living with them now. Nian, meanwhile, was very surprised that some device could make Liu Ye so happy. Now we go back one day in time, to an unknown level 40 dungeon. A vast forest under a bright moon surrounds the area. Several people were sitting around a campfire, discussing how if they cleared the level 40 dungeon, they would surpass the second-ranked team, which would increase their profits. They were also talking about the incredibly strong girl who helped them find a village. This girl was in the New Order group, and her team ranked third. Her name was Wei Shi. Suddenly, a man named Chao Yang approached her. He said she could ask to join the first-ranked team after clearing the dungeon, which would speed up her development. Confused, she didn't understand what he was saying, and completely ignored his approach. Then, one of the team members told the captains that if Wei Shi left, they wouldn't be able to progress as quickly anymore. They ignored the man's concern and began to discuss how the team would have no future if she left. Besides, they had invested a lot in her, and they couldn't just let her go, especially when they needed her the most. The captain took a deep breath and said they couldn't hold a person back because of their feelings. He believed she wouldn't forget them even after reaching the highest rank in the new order. The captain decided to confirm this, and with a smile he asked her. In response, he only saw Wei Shi's smile. The team member, holding his head in his hands, realized he couldn't just wish her luck on her new path. Another member agreed with the captain, saying he was right, and there was no reason to hold back Wei Shi's progress, as they were too weak. Everyone started saying that if the girl had a hard time on the first team, they would gladly welcome her back. It was just like before when she first joined. They would help with whatever she needed. They were all incredibly kind to the girl. In response, she smiled, thanked them, called them brothers, and said they were very good to her. Since they were being so kind, she wanted to ask one last favor. After she said that, she looked very embarrassed, and everyone around her was shocked, not understanding what she meant. There was a dead silence. A few seconds later, an intense light appeared. All the team members fell, showing no signs of life. Whoever was still alive used a healing skill and couldn't believe what they were seeing. Wei Shi, who had been with them the whole time, had betrayed them. She wanted to be incredibly strong, but her level wasn't high enough, so she decided to activate the dungeon's reward. This way, she would become the strongest player in the Yuan world. The captain was furious with her. After everything they had done for her, was this how she repaid their kindness? Again, Wei Shi just laughed and waved her hand, saying there was no need to be so angry. It was just a game, and they could always get back up and level up again. The captain refused to listen anymore and told her to go to hell. She was an ungrateful creature and he attacked her. Wei Shi was able to dodge the bullets and said she had warned him many times that no matter how much he shot at her in the Yuan world, the bullet speed was limited. Therefore, a bullet couldn't outpace a player with an agility stat over 100. Then, the girl simply got behind the captain and pierced his neck. Wei Shi repeated coldly that cold steel was an entirely different matter, because its power depended on the user's stats. Speed and damage weren't limited, so she was able to kill the captain easily. The next day, we are transported to a level 45 dungeon, where 20 people are fighting a humanoid monster. The captain reports that several people have run out of potions and asks if he has stocked up enough. The captain, known as Strikes from the New Order, was fighting with impressive strength, and everyone around him admired his skills. He was very good at what he did, but his power had a drawback. To build up enough power, he had to wait a long time. However, when he finally reached his maximum strength, he had no trouble defeating even the biggest monsters. The captain was level 45, and beside him was Blazing Fire of the New Order, also level 45. During the fight, the captain noticed another player with similar power. He immediately wondered if this player was an enemy or could be persuaded to join them. The master quickly replied that he had killed the captain of the Mirrored Kingdom. This surprised him so much that he started to scratch his head. The captain then asked about a girl named Wei Shi and what she was up to. The scene then shifts to a forest outside the control zone. A girl is standing on the edge of a cliff looking at her system screen. She received a private message from Blazing Fire, telling her she needed to meet a new player, our protagonist, because of his power. Wei Shi smiled happily as she read the message. It didn't mention killing or recruiting the character, but she knew powerful players were quite rare. If she managed to recruit the protagonist for the guild, it would mean she was doing everything for the guild's benefit. However, if she killed him, she would be going against the guild's development. The master, seeing this, didn't care about our character's future and left the decision to her. The girl, with her great worth, had to prove her competence by recruiting the protagonist. After thinking it over, she decided she would kill him. Meanwhile, at Liu Yi's place, he sat at the desk in his room and drafted a plan of action for the game. He needed to level up his character and gear to 60, and also prepare a fortified camp in the real world before the apocalypse. In his past life, he remembered the highest level any player had ever reached was 60. If he could reach that level before the real world was taken over, he would effectively be the strongest player. With that power, he could ensure his own safety and his sister's. With the collapse of public order and the scarcity of resources, only the most powerful guilds could restore balance. In this scenario, food became the most valuable currency. Therefore, it was essential to stockpile supplies and establish a safe camp for him and his sister. With the funds he had, he decided to rent a neighboring building, while the rest of the money would be invested in buying rice and canned food. Now, all he had to do was wait for the supplies to arrive. In the game, he was only level 36, still far from his goal. To reach the max level, he just needed to stay alive and keep gathering resources in the real world. That way, he and his sister could live in peace after the takeover. Upon entering the game with his sister and her friend, he led them to the Armory Pavilion. He explained that in the world of Unworld, strength was the most important skill, and it was based on weapon practice. To maximize their growth, it was essential to master different types of weaponry and awaken their true power. His sister analyzed the spear, while he reminded Nianchu that skill without ki was useless. So, they should practice with all the weapons until they reached their full potential. Currently, Nianchu was at level 32. They both agreed to the plan. After that, Liu Ye walked to the exit. Watching them, he reflected on how his actions had changed the course of history. In his past life, Nianchu didn't come to his house. He didn't believe his interference was related to her bringing the device for Liu Yun. In the past, thanks to Nianchu, he and his sister survived for 3 whole years. Now he felt it was his turn to repay her. With this determination, he ran out of the pavilion. Jumping for joy, he felt he was getting closer to his goal, reaching level 60. Half a day later, Liu Ye emerged from a level 35 dungeon, now at level 37. One of his team members, smiling, commented on his impressive strength, saying he could clear a dungeon designed for 10 players all by himself. Another teammate agreed, mentioning that without him, the group would have a much harder time. Excited, they decided to tackle the dungeon again, but Liu Ye refused as he had other priorities. The disappointed players insisted he add them as friends and promised to call them next time. He smiled, scratched the back of his neck, and agreed. However, upon returning to the team finding room, he nervously clenched his fists, thinking about a big problem. Clearing a level 35 dungeon for 10 players took at least half a day, maybe even a full one. The experience gained there was equivalent to half a level. If he continued at this pace, in 20 days before the real-world takeover, he would only reach level 50. Reaching 60 would be impossible. Sitting alone in the empty hall, he pondered his first experience clearing that dungeon. That's when he received the title of Dungeon Protector, and realized there was only one solution. By sacrificing 9 teammates, he could maximize his experience. In his previous life, dungeons like this were called slaughterhouses, and players who used this method were known as gutter rats. If he followed this path, he would become one of them. However, if this was the only alternative, his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a notification. A system window popped up before him, announcing a new message. Opening it, he saw an invitation to a dungeon. It was a level 40 expedition for 10 people. Reading the familiar name, he was surprised. Then, surprise turned into joy. Getting up from the bench, he exclaimed that this was the girl who, in his past life, became the strongest fighter. Liu Ye wondered why she would suddenly invite him to a dungeon. If he accepted, he would have a unique opportunity to level up quickly. A confident smile appeared on his face. Besides, she was a member of the New Order. In the past, he had never met her under such circumstances, so he was sure she was plotting something against him. His legs trembled for a moment, but his eyes remained steady. Only the dungeon would allow him to grow. With that in mind, he made his decision. He accepted the invitation. The team list was displayed before him. The players' levels ranged from 37 to 45. Seeing the familiar names on the list, Liu Ye smiled when he noticed Lin Fei. He recalled how, in his past life, he'd claimed the reward from a desperate situation by finishing the quest alone. To do so, he had destroyed all of his comrades. He remembered how his old teammates had trashed him in the general chat. The girl nicknamed Cookie had a similar story, but in her case, she started harassing the other players. In the end, she killed them all in self-defense. The other team members had similar pasts. The team for this dungeon had been hand-picked by Wei Xi herself. Liu Ye touched his chin thoughtfully, wondering how Wei Xi could have known these players were trouble. After joining the group, a chat became available. He announced that since everyone was gathered, they should head out. Wei Xi sent a point on the map for them to head to. Lin Fei, seeing the new member, questioned Wei Xi's choice. He doubted this was the player she mentioned and wondered why he was still level 37. Wei Xi replied that on this team, levels didn't matter. What was most important was strength. Liu Ye opened the map and noticed that most of the members were in Muxu City, while the others were in the out-of-control area, or on their way there. His expression grew serious as he analyzed the situation. The out-of-control zone was a dangerous place. Muxu City's controlled territories were divided into 5 zones. Muxu City served as a resource resupply point for all players. All the dungeons within the city were under control, and had long since been modified. There were dungeons for beginners and greater challenges. The especially dangerous zone was for players seeking extreme challenges. The controlled danger zone, on the other hand, was completely altered, and all its creatures were sealed within the city. He had already been to one of these dungeons with Chicken Crown. The Chaos Zone was a deadly territory. Muksu's influence over the dungeons there was minimal. Creatures above level 30 roamed freely outside the dungeons. The out-of-control zone was even worse. Players died almost immediately upon entering. There, creatures above level 70 wandered about. Finally, the destruction zone. Muksu City had no control whatsoever over this area. The creatures from the dungeons there couldn't be sealed. Max-level monsters, capable of annihilating everything. After some time, Liu Ye was already in the out-of-control area, approaching the meeting point. He was running quickly through the forest when he suddenly heard a scream. He turned, trying to identify who could be screaming. Right after, monsters made of branches and leaves appeared in the forest clearing. Seeing them, he ducked behind a nearby rock and watched as the creatures ran toward the stream, releasing vines along the way. He realized the monsters weren't that strong individually, but their numbers were a problem. A single sound could attract them in successive waves. That scream could only have come from a careless player. After a few moments, silence returned. Liu Ye peeked out and saw that the monsters had moved away. He wondered if the player who had screamed was still alive. He jumped out from his hiding spot, convinced he had to keep moving. He headed toward the meeting point, but out of the corner of his eye, he noticed something approaching. A spearhead was flying toward him. He reacted just in time, catching the weapon in midair and leaning his body back to dodge the blow. The attacker advanced, and Liu Ye tried to figure out who it was. The opponent held the spear firmly and attacked again, but Liu Ye managed to dodge. Now he was looking directly at his opponent's face, whose eyes burned with excitement. Liu Ye drew his katana and counterattacked. The enemy gripped his weapon with both hands, blocking the blade with the spearhead. Then he broke into a smile. The impact created a loud bang, sending dust and leaves flying everywhere. After a few seconds of silence, they stood face to face, sizing each other up. Lin Fei, the player who had attacked him, looked satisfied with the fight. It seemed he now understood why Liu Ye had been chosen by the captain. Liu Ye frowned, hesitating for a moment. Lin Fei, still smiling, acknowledged that his strength was no match for Liu Ye's, but he felt he had earned some respect from him. Before leaving, he pointed out that they needed to get to the meeting point quickly, or else they could be surrounded by monsters. With that, he left without further delay. Only then did Liu Ye lower his katana and watch Lin Fei walk away. He recognized that this player possessed true power, and there was a good chance that Wei Shi had this kind of strength as well. The team was incredibly strong. It was still unclear if anyone there could get the reward from the desperate situation, but the chance of them dying in that dungeon remained very high. However, after a while, he reached the meeting point, where the others were already waiting. As he approached the portal, he hesitated, noticing a girl sitting on a nearby rock, smiling at him. She stood up, clapped to get everyone's attention, and announced that she wanted to say a few words before they entered the dungeon. The protagonist looked at his teammates, recognizing he was now part of their group, even if he wasn't entirely sure about it. The captain spoke up, explaining that the dungeons in the uncontrolled zone were extremely unpredictable. For that reason, their first action upon entering should be to understand its rules, no matter how unusual they seemed. He stressed that everyone needed to stay calm and discuss the plan rationally, as this would be the key to completing the mission. The players agreed with him, and the girl approved of the group's attitude before leading them to the portal, saying they would now move forward. As the others moved ahead, the protagonist hesitated for a moment, remembering his earlier uncertainties. He reflected on his feelings and realized that ever since meeting Wei Shi, considered the strongest player, he had started to doubt his own abilities. He didn't know if his unease was insecurity, nervousness, or just the fear of never being their equal. He also feared failing and seeing all his efforts go to waste. However, instead of letting these doubts consume him, he looked up at the moon shining over the forest, took a deep breath, and moved forward, determined to prove his worth. As soon as they crossed the portal, images began to appear before their eyes, narrating the dungeon's story. A doll was lamenting that her companion no longer wanted to play with her. Leaning against the wall, unconscious, was the woman she used to have fun with. Without any emotion, the doll stated that if she didn't want to play, it would find another toy. The hallways then filled with corpses. The one responsible for the scene, a small, blood-stained mechanical puppet, expressed boredom, saying its old companion had been the most fun. Now, with no one left, it needed to go home. However, it lowered its head and muttered to itself that this was no longer possible. The cutscene ended, and the players found themselves at the top of a circular tower. In the center, on a pedestal, was the same bloody doll. At the base of the structure, an inscription read, "Hope and despair coexist." The team was still trying to process what they had just watched when one of the players questioned what kind of dungeon they had entered. Another group member agreed that this was unlike anything they had ever seen. They moved away from the portal, and one player commented that the unpredictability of dungeons, their maps, and challenges made the meta world both terrifying and fascinating. Another added that the most distressing part was knowing it was impossible to clear certain dungeons without losing your life in the process. Looking at the pedestal, they concluded that the only entity there was the doll, which suggested it might be the main key to understanding this place. However, before they could react, the figure vanished, and immediately the system notified all players the dungeon entrance has been sealed. To escape, they must complete the mission titled Puppets Tricks. The dungeon required the players to destroy the doll. A puppet would appear in one team member's backpack, and the other's task was to eliminate the puppet's owner. The dungeon would only be completed if the player with the puppet survived for up to 6 hours. If the time ran out, the mission would fail. According to the rules, the puppet's owner could transfer it to another player if they managed to kill one of their allies. The protagonist was surprised as he read the mission description. He thought that this dungeon seemed to be created especially for those who wanted to get rewards in a desperate situation. The mission indicated that if the player left the puppet for the last survivor, they would have a 100% chance of winning the grand prize. The system announced that the puppet had appeared and the countdown had begun. Lou immediately decided to check his backpack to make sure he didn't have the toy. However, as he opened the system window, he stopped and thought this wasn't the right time. He knew that once the other players calmed down, he would have to check if he had the puppet. If he did, he would have to decide whether to turn it in, but that would make him a target for everyone else. Facing two powerful fighters wasn't the best position, and his chances of death increased drastically. The other players started eyeing each other suspiciously, and the atmosphere grew tense. Liu Ye noticed that everyone seemed wary of the person next to them. Maybe they were hiding something, or perhaps they were in the same situation as him. It was then that Wei Shi clapped her hands, getting the group's attention. Liu Ye shifted his gaze to her as Wei Shi smiled and spoke. She suggested that since everyone knew the mission's objective, whoever had the puppet should just give themselves up, accepting certain death. She proposed that everyone would give a fair share of the reward. Wei Shi asked if all the players who didn't have the puppet in their backpack agreed with the idea. Most of the players agreed with her proposal. Taking advantage of the distraction, the protagonist saw a chance to quickly check his backpack while everyone was focused on her. He opened the system window and looked through his inventory. However, his eyes widened in surprise. He discovered the puppet was in his backpack. He thought to himself that he had just joined the team, and they had already given him this puppet as a gift. He frowned as he looked at his inventory one more time, then glanced at the other players. His main goal now was to eliminate one of the team members so the puppet would pass to someone else. He needed to get rid of the imminent threat, but he still didn't know who to target. Even if he handed over the puppet, he'd struggle to fight two powerful players who would surely show no mercy. Without waiting for a response, one of the players asked if anyone wanted to confess. Liu Ye remained silent, lowering his gaze, but was soon caught off guard by the team captain, who walked up and faced him directly. With a confident smile, he stated it was time for Liu Ye to admit he had the puppet. Liu Ye was surprised by the sudden accusation, but quickly composed himself, his expression turning serious. As he processed the captain's words, one of the female players called him by name, claiming he liked to stand out. Then she demanded that he speak for himself. Liu Ye, however, remained stiff and silent. He looked back at the other team members, noticing they all had peculiar smiles. The memory of the glances they'd exchanged sparked a growing suspicion. Slowly, he realized that even without directly analyzing each other's reactions, they had found a way to confirm he had the puppet. They were all working together. Upon understanding the situation, Liu Ye let out a laugh. It all seemed so obvious now. A sudden invitation to such a strong team was nothing more than a disguised test. Though he still didn't fully understand the woman's hostility towards him, he concluded that this dungeon was specifically designed to eliminate him. The large number of players gathered here was proof of that. He gave the female player an assessing look and, analyzing the situation, concluded that by inviting him to complete the dungeon, she had signed her own death warrant. After all, the only reward in this desperate situation belonged to him. His smile widened as he better understood the game they were trying to force on him. The woman, in turn, commented that he was rude, but it didn't bother her. Liu Ye had already shown his strength, but he was still far from being a match for the rest of the team. They didn't waste time on pointless arguments. The sooner the battle ended, the faster they could move on to the next leveling session. Faced with this, he simply agreed. It was then that Lin Fei shouted, offering him a chance to defend himself. To him, this would make the fight more interesting. After all, they wanted to crush his hopes little by little. Wei Shi, for her part, covered her face with her hands and lamented how cruel they were being. However, she soon pulled her hands away, revealing a cunning smile. With a sharp gaze, she stated that Liu Ye shouldn't force them to act this way. Without hesitation, Liu Ye quickly swapped his equipment for a pendulum and aimed the weapon at her. However, he hesitated before shooting. Wei Xi observed his hesitation and concluded he didn't want to act rashly. She also realized he wasn't even aware that he was being spared. The other team members, upon seeing the weapon he was holding, reacted with scorn, trading insults among themselves. They scoffed that they should have been more careful. After all, a fool who shot without thinking wouldn't stand a chance against opponents like them. Lin Fei smiled, pondering that if they had been warned about Liu Ye, it was because he had some kind of special ability. Perhaps his shots had the ability to imprison his enemies. The other players laughed, remarking that he knew the metaverse meta. Magic prisons were well-known tricks in that world. One of the allies suggested they take the situation seriously, because in the Met, it was possible to create traps. This specific type of technique was what they called a cage. Wei Xi laughed again, clearly enjoying the whole situation. Liu Ye then smiled and activated his capture ability. Wei Xi's smile vanished instantly, and she leapt back, stopping a few meters away. She looked down at herself and, seeing she was still unharmed, tried to hide her nervousness. For a moment, she shuddered and called out to Lin Fei, warning him they shouldn't mess with Liu Ye. She realized it would be safer to attack him together to end this confrontation as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Liu Ye kept smiling, satisfied that he had trapped Lin Fei inside the cage. The trapped player struggled to break free, but the chains held firm. The other team members reacted with surprise, crying out in shock at what had happened. Even Wei Xi stared at her teammate, in disbelief at the scene before her eyes. It was at that moment that Liu Ye used his special pistol ability, called Lockup. The technique allowed him to choose between tripling the damage or stunning the target. He chose to increase the damage, and immediately, the system announced that 100 knowledge points had been consumed. His next attack would deal 5,000 damage. With his eyes gleaming with determination, he raised the weapon, aimed directly at Lin Fei, and without hesitation pulled the trigger. The fired bullet cut through the air, heading straight for the immobilized player. The bullet pierced Lin Fei's body, tearing a huge hole in his stomach. He lost all his health points and collapsed to the ground. The system announced that Liu Ye had eliminated Lin Fei and successfully transferred the doll to another player. With a team member's death, the Dungeon Defender title activated, increasing all stats by 10%. Additionally, he received a pearl as a reward for the kill. Meanwhile, the other team members stared at their fallen comrade, shocked by what had just happened. Liu Ye, on the other hand, was reflecting on his situation and what he feared most: the two scenarios that could lead to his death. The first possibility was facing Wei Xi and Lin Fei together in a direct assault. The second, even more dangerous, was the presence of a fourth team member, someone with an unknown power. Assessing the available information, he realized that on their team, only Wei Xi and Lin Fei were strong enough to face him. This meant the real danger lay in the first option. His opponents were overconfident because they underestimated his strength. Thanks to that mistake, he managed to eliminate Lin Fei, shattering the balance of the strongest duo. Now that he had significantly reduced the threat, he just needed to finish off the rest of the team. A smile spread across his face as he realized victory was within his grasp. Although the ideal move would have been to eliminate Wei Xi first, she managed to dodge the shot at the last moment. This was due to her high perception, a trait that gave her an edge in fast-paced combat. Liu Ye then issued a direct warning to the team, informing them that the doll had passed to one of them. If they wanted to protect their ally, they had to act immediately. Otherwise, he would destroy the doll, preventing any chance of revenge. Aware that the team was weakened, he considered that he needed to be cautious to secure his victory and collect the dungeon's reward. His next step was to identify the player who had the doll in their inventory and keep it until the end. The team captain, hearing this, cursed loudly before freezing in place. The sense of immediate danger made her spin quickly toward the group and order everyone not to move. She knew Liu Ye was trying to find the player with the doll. The other team members, visibly nervous, formed a circle around one of their own, trying to hide them. The player in the center, frightened, instinctively took a step back. Liu Ye noticed her behavior and smiled, realizing he had found his target. The player's terrified look confirmed his suspicion. He reflected that, at that moment, she was completely surrounded. Without wasting time, he propelled his body forward and activated his skill, boosting his stats by 200%. He charged directly toward his goal, determined to eliminate anyone who tried to stop him. With his katana in hand, he advanced, cutting down the players in his path. Their resistance was insignificant. The system announced he had defeated 6 opponents, increasing his stats by 70%. Some of his attributes surpassed the 1,000-point mark. As a reward for the eliminations, he received new pearls, equipment, and items. Faced with the carnage, Wei Xi charged forward furiously, wielding her dagger and trying to strike him. Liu Ye, however, reacted quickly, blocking the attack with a precise movement of his weapon. Meanwhile, one of the players, nicknamed Cookie, was trembling with fear and fell to the ground, unable to react. The team captain, noticing his condition, exclaimed that Cookie was still alive but had the doll. That meant Liu Ye was aiming for the dungeon's reward. Surprised by his audacity, the captain scoffed, but Liu Ye only answered with a smile. Her boots glowed as she activated her arcane leap power, allowing her to move quickly to the side. She warned her opponent that he had made a mistake by targeting her. With nearly imperceptible speed, she began to circle around him. Liu Ye stayed alert, noticing that in an instant, she had simply vanished from his field of view. Before he could react, Wei Shi appeared behind him, ready to strike. However, anticipating her movement, he turned and swung his katana in her direction. Wei Shi, more agile, dodged again and reappeared behind him, striking with a punch. Without giving him room to recover, she continued to attack repeatedly, drastically reducing Liu Ye's health. He then activated his recovery power, instantly restoring his health bar. Then, he raised his blade over his opponent. Wei Shi, surprised, announced that the damage she had dealt was 9,000 points, equivalent to 75% of his health. She recognized she was facing an absurdly resilient opponent. The blows of their blades clashed with a loud clang. Confident, Wei Shi stated that at this rate, he would run out of healing potions before the battle was over. That would guarantee her victory. Liu Ye, however, just smiled. Without hesitation, Wei Shi switched weapons and executed a sudden attack. The blow was devastating, reducing his health by 9,800 points. But, just like before, Liu Ye restored his health in the same instant. Stunned, Wei Shi pondered what was happening. She knew the level 30 instant recovery potion restored only 1,000 health points, and each player could only carry 10 vials inside the dungeon. However, Liu Ye had already regenerated over 19,000 points in total. It didn't make any sense. While she was trying to understand the situation, she didn't notice Liu Ye's sudden movement. He lunged forward with a powerful punch, hitting her hard. Then, with a smile on his face, he apologized. Liu Ye confidently stated that he was the only winner there. Wei Shi gritted her teeth, dodging at the exact moment he attacked again. He watched her with a displeased look as she quickly retreated, stopping beside Cookie. It was then that she made an observation. Given Liu Ye's enormous health pool, she was convinced he possessed support skills. Liu Ye smiled at her deduction and replied that Wei Shi, on the other hand, had invested all her distribution points into dexterity. Besides her strength in close combat, her speed reached an abnormal level, and her attacks almost always resulted in critical hits. For a brief moment, her expression turned serious. Then, she forced a smile and admitted that because of this, her cognition power was extremely low, leaving her completely exhausted now. She reflected that she was probably out of options. Perhaps the best course of action was to simply kill Cookie and end this confrontation once and for all. Liu Ye immediately grew cautious. He thought that he had somehow overplayed his own strength to the point of forcing her to consider this extreme option. Wei Shi was just too fast. If she wanted to, she could have killed Cookie hundreds of times before he could even react. But if she knew she couldn't defeat him directly, why was she still hesitating? Her behavior seemed contradictory. Liu Ye then asked what exactly she was waiting for. If Cookie was still alive, it meant it wasn't time to celebrate just yet. The system notified him that the enhancement of all stats was complete. Additionally, the pendulum and captivity skill had recharged. His eyes widened and, without wasting a moment, he pointed his weapon at Wei Shi, ready to activate his skill. However, his body suddenly froze in place. Confusion flooded his mind. What was happening? Before he could understand, Cookie delivered a fatal blow to the team captain. Wei Shi looked at Liu Ye with a confident smile. The truth was revealed in the following seconds. Shortly before, Wei Shi had instructed Cookie to kill her and then take his own life, thus ensuring Liu Ye could not claim victory. She promised her companion double the reward if he followed the plan. And that's exactly what he did. After striking her, Cookie killed himself. Their bodies began to disappear. Liu Ye remained motionless, stunned by what had just happened. It was unbelievable. Wei Shi laughed out loud before vanishing completely, calling Liu Ye a loser and declaring that he had lost. When their bodies were completely gone, Liu Ye was left alone in the dungeon. He took a step back, still confused, until his legs gave way and he fell to the floor. His mind raced with questions. How did this happen? Why? Checking his inventory, he realized the doll had returned to him. That realization hit him hard. The fight had been completely nullified. He wondered why Wei Shi would do something like that. Was it all just to deny him a potential victory? To him, that was ridiculous. He grabbed his own head in despair, trying to understand what he should do. They had both died, and now the doll was with him. If Wei-Si hadn't killed herself and he had managed to defeat her, the doll would have completed its journey in his inventory. Now, with no players left, all that remained was to wait for his own death. The chance to change everything was lost so easily. He should have won. A loud, desperate scream echoed throughout the dungeon. After a while, his breathing stabilized. He lay on the ground, trying to catch his breath. Staring at the ceiling, he muttered to himself that there had to be another way. If all his allies were dead, then Yuan World wouldn't just let him lose like this. This meant there had to be another method to get around this situation. He stood up and looked around, trying to think of all the possibilities. Then he decided to explore the room, determined to find a way out. Upon reaching the edge of the platform, Liu Ye reached out and felt something invisible in front of him. He quickly realized it was a transparent wall. Analyzing his surroundings, he concluded that the special dungeon's territory was limited to the size of that cylindrical platform. After another careful inspection of the area, he headed to the central pedestal. With the doll in hand, he climbed onto the pedestal and stood cautiously, assessing every detail around him. Soon, his eyes landed on a plaque engraved with an intriguing message: "Hope and despair exist together." Looking closer, he noticed a scratched marking just below the main inscription. Approaching, he realized something was written in small letters. Running his fingers over the stone surface, he managed to decipher the words engraved there. "I can't open the door." As he touched the inscription, he felt the slab under his hand give way slightly. A distinct sound of a mechanism being activated echoed in the air. At that moment, the system notified him that he had found the entrance to the Cutscene Research Institute. New information appeared before him. To open the membrane, 1,000 cognition points were required. Liu Ye frowned at the required amount. It was a significant sum, especially since his energy was already compromised due to various effects. Even with a strength of over 1/500, his last battle had left him with just over 1,000 cognition points. He wasn't sure how to get more within this environment. By spending 700 points to increase all his skills by 350, he would reach the 1,000 cognition points needed to open the membrane. This way, he would still have a surplus of over 300 points. Considering he was about to enter unknown territory, he decided it was best to be in full combat readiness. Confirming his choice, the system registered the action. All of his skills were increased by 350 points. The 700 cognition points were consumed. The remaining 1,000 points were used to open the membrane. In that same instant, the pedestal before him transformed into a door. A strong gust of wind blew against his face. Suddenly, a male voice called his name. The tone of the voice carried urgency, urging him to make a decision quickly. The voice mentioned the need to choose between two options: display what follows you, or dissolve and map everything. Liu Ye blinked, confused, not fully understanding the situation. The man insisted, warning that the choice had to be made immediately for his computing power to be activated. Feeling lost, Liu Ye tried to find some logic in it. What exactly did these options mean? And what would be the consequences of a wrong choice? He analyzed the context. If this was a fixed system test, then they were likely on the verge of a major disaster. The key point seemed to be the idea of computing power. He pondered whether displaying this power meant ensuring his own survival, or if it was just a tool that could be used to escape the imminent catastrophe. Reflecting on his past life, he realized he had never gotten this far to face such a dilemma. If the goal was to ensure his and his sister's survival, the most logical option would be to display what follows him. However, if the only way to avoid the disaster was by using an external resource, then the safe path would be to dissolve and map everything. Liu Ye knew that if the disaster was inevitable, the only way to face it was to be prepared to deal with the consequences. He also considered that the purpose of mapping the computing power might be related to selecting individuals with certain qualities, but how could he be sure he was making the right choice? At the end of his reflection, he concluded that he needed to ensure the Forgotten Ones had access to the perfect computing power. After all, only a few could return to the characteristic of imagination. If the first world hadn't emerged, the player's level would never have evolved to where they were now. Convinced that this was the best possible decision, Liu Ye chose to dissolve and map everything. At the moment he confirmed his choice, sparks appeared before his eyes. He held his breath, waiting for the result. However, as soon as the light faded, he realized he was in the exact same place. His body remained motionless for a few seconds, until he finally frowned and looked around. Nothing had changed. The conclusion was inevitable. He had chosen the wrong option. Liu Ye sat down and crossed his arms, wondering if the right answer was to focus on revealing who was following him. He still had 350 cognition points left. Because it was a parasite in his body, the puppet kept him in a constant state of battle, making his cognition recovery incredibly slow. Even so, with the 5 hours remaining, he could gather 1,000 points and get the chance to take the test twice. That would be enough. All he had to do was wait. He closed his eyes and prepared to wait. After an hour and a half, the system notified him that he had accumulated 700 cognition points. He snapped his eyes open, sped up his recovery, and spent 1,000 points to open the membrane. Once again, he was presented with the same two options: focus on displaying who is following him, or dissolve and map everything. Liu Ye was about to click the first option, but he hesitated at the last moment. If the test was just about choosing between these options, then why couldn't he just enter the research institute by making the right choice? If the door blocked the puppet's path, then it would never be able to enter the institute it considered home. Something was wrong. But what was it? Was it a matter of knowledge power, or maybe it was related to a specific trait? The available information indicated that the puppet had left the institute out of stubbornness and now wanted to return, but the door was stopping it. Maybe it wasn't about the right choice, but the right attitude. Liu Ye frowned, considering this possibility. After thinking it over, he decided to trust his judgment and chose the second option again. Once again, he returned to the platform. Nothing had changed. He only had one more try left. If he made a mistake, he would have to wait again. Even so, he still believed in himself. He sat down once more and waited. An hour and a half later, only 27 minutes remained before the task ended. Checking his cognition points, he saw he had accumulated 700. Liu Ye opened his eyes, used his remaining points, and activated the membrane. This time, upon choosing the second option, he immediately backed away and felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. He leaped back and saw the pedestal begin to descend. A satisfied smile spread across his face as he shouted out loud that he had done it. The hardest part of the test was over. He was now sure the real challenge wasn't picking the right option, but insisting on the validity of his choice. The door would only open if the same option was selected 3 times in a row. A staircase leading down appeared before him. He looked at the entrance to the research institute and concluded that the secret level was meant to be completed by a team. As he walked down the steps, he realized no one had ever completed this task the way he had. To do it, he had to enhance all his skills, rely on pure wisdom, and activate a special counterattack. Without these upgrades, opening the door 3 times would have been impossible. Right now, no one else could access that hidden level. Liu Ye knew he had been very cautious. Still, desperation could lead him to make risky decisions. Being bold, however, didn't mean being reckless. If he had known before entering that his team was so unstable, he wouldn't have made the mistakes that led to so many deaths. He walked down a long, empty, and well-lit hallway. At the end of the path, he found a door. In front of it lay a bloody corpse. As he got closer, he saw it was a woman. Suddenly, a bright sphere appeared before him. Liu Ye looked down at his own chest, surprised, and saw the sphere detach from him. It floated over to the corpse and merged with the body. Right after, the system announced that the evil doll had been purified. As a reward, Liu Ye received 1% of the membrane's computing power. He sighed in relief. The system then announced that the Desperate Situation achievement had been unlocked, triggering a series of rewards. The system configuration began to adjust. Overcome with emotion, Liu Ye felt his legs go weak and leaned against the wall. He stored his weapon in his inventory. His legs were shaking. A smile crossed his face as he realized he was truly afraid of death. He covered his face with his hand, feeling ashamed of his reaction. The system reported that the configuration was complete. He received 22,464 experience and 400 coins. His level rose to 44. His HP bar increased to 3,720 and his knowledge power to 846. His combat power was now 898. 2 new skills were unlocked. Status Lock freezes the target's health bar and prevents them from spending knowledge power. Every 10 levels adds 1 second to the freeze time. All skills are applicable to the target for 10 minutes. Consumes 50 cognition points. Every 10 levels, the duration increases by 10 seconds. Liu Ye clenched his fists in excitement. He still couldn't believe what he had accomplished. He thought he had only defeated Wei Shi, but in reality, he had overcome something much greater. He jumped into the air and exclaimed, laughing with joy. The dungeon began to disappear around him. Meanwhile, his sister and her friend had already mastered their weapon skills. The two looked at each other, pleased. Wei Shi was waiting for Liu Ye at the player's resurrection point. 6 hours had passed since she last saw him. He still hadn't returned. She crossed her arms, worried, and wondered where he could be. Just then, Blazing Fire sent a message asking what had happened. Wei Shi replied with a single sentence. There was a death. Blazing Fire asked if Liu Ye was responsible. Wei Shi clarified that, in fact, she had been the one who died. For a moment, Blazing Fire was speechless. After a short pause, she added that she had obtained valuable information. He wanted to know what he should do. Wei Shai instructed him to arrange a battle for her in the Mirror Realm. A single copy of Mirror would be enough to restore her level. Blazing Fire agreed. Finally, she mentioned that Liu Ye was the person he was looking for, and that he possessed a special support power. Blazing Fire sat in his guild's meeting room, frowning as he looked at a message from Wei Shi. The man sitting across from him said he knew how rare support power was, and offered to help in the uncontrolled zone. His nickname was Ouija, level 45, and he used his fists instead of weapons. He also possessed support power. He promised to help, but demanded something in return, 10,000 coins. The guild leader replied with a sly grin that it was no problem. Ouija then left the New Order's headquarters, where his friend was already waiting for him. Seeing him, his friend excitedly asked how it went. They had all been jumping for joy, having scoured the entire network to find the owner of the support power. Ouija ignored the excitement and, in frustration, kicked a post, making his friend flinch. After calming down a bit, he said he had arranged everything. His friend exclaimed that this was the first step of their plan and questioned why he was so angry. Ouija crouched down and yelled, furious that he wasn't the only player with support power. Now they had to rethink their plan to reach the top of the New Order. Meanwhile, Liu Ye was sitting in his room, looking at a piece of paper where he had jotted down his thoughts. He pondered the hash power permission, which represented the authority to control the computing output of a specific large machine. He then wondered if the reward for upgrading the special dungeon was just the start of a major quest, or if it had a deeper meaning. Liu Ye questioned what would happen upon reaching 100% computing power and the relationship between the hash power permission and the test. Rubbing the tip of his nose, he felt exhaustion taking over, but he knew he had to keep thinking. His future depended on it. He decided to get up and leave his room to relax and take a shower before returning to the game. As soon as he opened the door and stepped into the hall, he noticed Nianshu coming out of the bathroom, drying her hair with a towel.
Seeing him, she stopped and waved. He returned the wave with a smile and headed for the bathroom, but before going in, he glanced back at her. He thought about how there was always a pleasant scent in the air when she was home. His face flushed slightly, and he scratched his cheek in embarrassment. Suddenly, he slapped his own face, wondering what he was even thinking. He needed to hurry up and get in the game to set a goal for the next phase.
After some time, he was back in the game and headed to the pavilion, where equipment was crafted and sold. Standing at the terminal, he reflected on his situation. He was level 44 and needed to gain 16 more levels to reach level 60. To do that, he would have to complete a special dungeon 32 times, which would take about 20 days. There were only 22 days left until Yuan World became a reality. Time was too short, and he might not reach his goal in time. On top of that, he still had issues with his equipment. There were two ways to obtain metal or equipment. The first was to use coins directly. The second was to upgrade lower-level equipment. Currently, he had 11,021 coins. Of that, 6,750 were rewards from running a special dungeon, and the rest came from dismantling equipment he didn't use. The system asked if he wanted to create 40 purple items for 650 coins each, and upgrade them from level 30 to 40 for 400 coins. He realized he was still missing 3 pieces of equipment: a headpiece, a necklace, and an emblem. Combining 9 pieces with the remaining 40 would cost him 5,550 coins. The system reported it would take 100 seconds to level up the purple equipment. Liu Ye calculated that he would need 16,129 coins to reach level 60. This meant he would have to play more than 40 additional times. He crossed his arms thoughtfully, realizing that if he wanted to reach his goal, he'd have to take risks and seek extra rewards. But who should he target? Suddenly, a new message arrived, catching his attention. Before opening it, he hesitated for a moment, a growing sense of nervousness washing over him. News usually only arrived in emergencies. He told the system to open the message and saw it was a private communication from the guild leader of the New Order. The message asked if he was free and if they could talk. He was surprised, remembering how in his previous life, other players had kicked him out, saying that trash like him had no place in the New Order. After the New Order established itself in the Middle World, they occupied the entire southern region of China and became the strongest guild in the world. They aim to manage the elite, and as long as someone is an elite or has special talents, their life depends directly on the New Order. They treat low-level players without special talents like trash, oppressing them in every possible way. As someone who died in a previous life, he could say it was impossible not to hate the New Order. He frowned and looked at the message, thinking he was extremely weak back then. He wondered what was wrong. Blazing Fire wrote that he wants to form a team specializing in the uncontrolled zone. but so far they don't have enough people. He heard that Liu Ye has support powers, so he's inviting him to join the team. If he has any conditions, he can state them, and they can try to reach an agreement. Liu Ye asked if they were only missing a player with support powers. Blazing Fire confirmed his words, and Liu Ye became nervous. Then Blazing Fire wrote that, in other words, this is the strongest team in that world. He asked why they would go to an uncontrolled area. Blazing Fire said he had his reasons. Liu Ye replied that he would think about it and write to him later. After that, he wondered if he should agree. Although this team almost stopped him from earning rewards for madness, it allowed him to accumulate experience and coins several times faster than a regular team. He wonders why he would go there. It's impossible to use the market's transfer gate to go directly to the secret territory. Besides, several monsters above level 70 live there. He decided not to worry about it for now and thought he should upgrade his equipment first. The system reported that 650 coins are needed to craft purple equipment. Soon, the upgrade was complete, and all of his equipment's stats improved. With this, his attack power increased to 9,900, defense to 716, and intelligence to 678, while the rest ranged from 134 to 2011. His health increased to 6030, and his cognitive power rose to 2034. His current combat power is estimated at 102. Since his combat power surpassed 100, he was upgraded to a Supreme Space Hunter. The attribute level increased from +1 to +2. Because of this, his attack power rose to 11,400, defense to 892, resistance to 159, health to 8,040, and knowledge power to 2,112. The main character looked at his upgraded equipment and was very happy, thinking that combat strength gives such cool boosts. After he surpassed 100 attributes, the mark increased, and his strength was amplified by 30%. If he continued to improve his combat effectiveness, he would be able to increase all his other attributes as well. How much is needed? 200? 100? Or 1,000. He suddenly frowned as he thought of something else and looked away. He thought that the battle force system could be turned on as long as he had power, but if he has such opportunities, then other players do too. The members of the team formed by the New Order's president. Such a team is equal to a group of 10. The clones made going to the uncontrolled zone a more viable possibility than it initially seemed. Liu Ye sent a message to Blazing Fire, informing him that he would join the team. The reply came immediately, stating that his decision was reasonable. He was told that the team already had a player with support power, ensuring there would be no risk for him. Additionally, Blazing Fire mentioned that Liu Ye would receive a reward of 100 coins. Liu Ye was surprised. He didn't understand the reason for such generosity. It was clear the leader was very wealthy, but didn't seem to care about that detail. If there were any ulterior motives behind that act, he would at least have the benefit of securing enough money to feed himself. He relayed the information to the group, and the president of the New Order soon replied, saying there was no problem with it. Satisfied, Liu Ye noted that he was now part of the team. The invitation to officially join the team was made and accepted without objection. After that, a message was sent in the general chat for the other members to greet the newcomer. Wuji showed interest, asking if he would be the second support player besides himself. After a brief exchange of greetings, the president scheduled a meeting at the North Gate. Before leaving, Liu Ye picked up a knife and reflected on his preparation. He decided it would be wise to turn off his headgear and carry a common weapon. If something unexpected happened, he would have a way to protect himself. He also thought it best to keep the knife hidden. The uncertainty of this new environment could put his safety at risk. Upon arriving at the North Gate, he examined the team's member list. Almost everyone was level 50, except for the 2 players with support powers. Moving a bit further, Liu Ye saw a crowd gathered. Blazing Fire was among them, arms crossed, with a look of disgust. The other players seemed curious and were closely watching the new member's arrival. Wuji noticed his presence first, turning to wave excitedly. Liu Ye walked over to him and gave a brief introduction. The greeting was returned with a smile. Blazing Fire broke the silence, commenting that he had never met holders of support power before. Now, he had 2 right in front of him. Before they left for the uncontrolled zone, he informed them that there was something he wanted to show everyone. Liu Ye watched him more closely. The possibility that this was the president of the New Order became more evident. If it were true, then he was standing before one of the most powerful people in that world. The president announced that before they set off, the 2 new members must demonstrate their abilities. The support players exchanged glances before Wuji stepped forward, offering to go first. Meanwhile, Liu Ye scratched the back of his neck, confused. It made no sense to have to prove his skills there. The invitation to join the team had already been made. Still, the request was reinforced with the argument that the team would feel more confident about them. Liu Ye nodded, Understanding the logic behind the demand, Wuji then approached Blazing Fire and shared what he had learned about his own ability. He explained that the activation distance of the power depended on the range of the weapon he used. To demonstrate, he raised his hand and explained that his gloves had an attack radius of 1 to 2 meters. Because of this, if he were beyond that limit, his abilities would have no effect. Blazing Fire understood quickly, commenting that the relationship between the weapon and the ability made sense. Liu Ye, on the other hand, was surprised by this revelation. If Wuji's gloves had such a short range, and he himself used a pistol, what was the real limit of his own ability? He had never stopped to think about it before. His powers had always worked without him needing to calculate the distance. Suddenly, he felt uneasy. While he pondered this, Wuji began his skill demonstration. First, he activated a recovery power. Then, he used his second technique, called Mantra. He explained that this ability could be used against bosses, as it caused weakening, aging, and slowing effects. Next, he demonstrated his third ability, temporarily chaining the hands of the New Order's president. He informed them that this technique was called Silence, capable of restraining any enemy, including bosses. To finish, he stated that he would leave his fourth ability as a trump card reserved for more critical situations. Blazing Fire watched everything with a satisfied smile. Meanwhile, Liu Ye concluded that he would follow the same strategy. He would reveal only 3 useful skills to the team, keeping the fourth a secret. When his turn came, he stepped forward and explained that he used a blade with an attack radius of 3 meters, superior to Wuji's. He repeated the demonstration of the recovery ability, followed by the second technique, called Blessing. The third ability was Prison. To illustrate, he used the technique on the president, who was completely immobilized. The ability was quickly deactivated, and Liu Ye explained that the effect lasted about 10 seconds, though he couldn't guarantee it would work on bosses. He also mentioned that Blessing could remove any negative condition, including his own prison. Just like Wuji, he kept his fourth ability a secret. At the end of the demonstration, he exchanged a look with Wuji, noticing the confidence reflected in the other player's eyes. Blazing Fire absorbed all the information before declaring that he understood both of their capabilities. With that cleared up, he announced they could finally leave. Turning to the other members, he made a statement. Due to the lack of support players, the group had always been limited to the peripheral areas of the uncontrolled zone. However, now that they had 2 holders of this power, they could delve deeper into the region and explore its secrets. The players received his words with enthusiasm, raising their fists in a gesture of determination before setting off. Liu Ye watched the scene and began to reflect. The rewards from exploring the Chaos Zone and the Uncontrolled Zone were practically the same. However, the level of danger was different. He questioned what made the Uncontrolled Zone special, why the president of the New Order insisted on exploring it, and if something hidden was in that place. His train of thought was interrupted when he realized he had stopped walking. Wuji noticed his hesitation and waved, getting his attention. Liu Ye started walking again, smiling at him, before continuing to follow the group. However, as he moved forward, his expression slowly hardened. For him, there was only room for 1 support player on that team. It was only a matter of time before Wuji was eliminated, and when that happened, Liu Ye would be the sole holder of that power on the team. Upon reaching the entrance to the Uncontrolled Zone, the players were met with the decaying landscape that awaited them. Tall, ruined buildings were scattered everywhere, creating a dark and oppressive scene. The team captain took the lead, explaining the unique aspects of this area compared to the Chaos Zone and the Danger Zone. The main difference was that the difficulty in the Uncontrolled Zone was determined by the number of team members. For that reason, their group consisted of 10 people. However, even though this was the minimum number allowed, the difficulty would still be equivalent to a squad of 80 combatants. Because of this, they had to stay alert at all times and never act recklessly. Furthermore, the captain warned them that killing monsters in this region offered no rewards. Given this, if they encountered any, their priority was to find shelter immediately. If there was no safe place nearby, they were to do their best to distract them. If it became necessary to sacrifice some team members to ensure the survival of the rest, then so be it. A heavy silence fell over the players after that statement. Without further delay, the captain leaped forward, throwing himself off one of the buildings. Without hesitation, the other players followed his lead, jumping after him. Liu Ye, on the other hand, remained crouched for a moment, scanning the surroundings. Then he pushed himself forward and jumped as well. As he neared the ground, he noticed the darkness around him growing thicker. As soon as his feet touched the ground, he looked up at the sky. A flash of lightning illuminated the horizon between the ruined buildings. Glancing to the side, he saw the other team members, and, near them, a monster perched atop a half-destroyed building. The creature, noticing the player's presence, let out a deafening roar. Liu Ye frowned, assessing the situation. Blazing Fire, keeping his composure, ordered those with camouflage skills to use them immediately. The players reacted quickly, scattering in search of hiding spots. As soon as they started running, the monster leaped from the roof and gave chase. But before it could get close, a second creature appeared out of nowhere, grabbing the first monster with brutal force. The captured being let out a piercing shriek as it was crushed in the larger predator's fist, then violently thrown off the building. The new threat didn't hesitate and started running after the group. One of the players, hearing noises from behind, instinctively turned to look. His eyes widened as he spotted a colossal monster in pursuit. Recognizing the creature, he shouted a warning to the president of the New Order. A man-eating leopard was hunting them. What was supposed to be a simple entry into the uncontrolled zone had turned into a disaster. Blazing Fire, remaining cool, warned them not to panic. He ordered them to keep trying to avoid direct confrontation as much as possible. The group ran into a narrow alley, trying to shake the creature. Wuji, intrigued, questioned the monster's true strength. In response, one of the guild members explained that on a previous occasion, 10 squads had been sent to the uncontrolled zone to gather information. 5 of those groups were wiped out by a single beast of that species. Even with such an alarming report, Wuji remained skeptical. The creature, meanwhile, seemed to have figured out the group's escape route. Instead of following them directly, it took a shortcut, smashing through a building wall and appearing before the players at the end of the alley. Blazing Fire, without hesitating, called out to a blindfolded team member and ordered him to distract the monster. The player immediately stopped and obeyed, activating his taunt ability. The effect would last for 1 minute, reducing the leopard's speed by 10%, but in return, it would increase its attack power. As soon as the ability took effect, the monster abruptly halted its charge, focusing its attention on the new target. The player then ran in the opposite direction of the group, luring the beast with him. Wuji watched the scene intently, considering how he could take advantage of the situation. Then, he shifted his gaze to Liu Ye, his expression growing even more serious. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and activated his marking ability on him. From that moment on, Liu Ye would be within the perception range of all creatures within a 1,000-meter radius. The effect would last for exactly 10 minutes. As soon as the skill was activated, all the monsters in the area immediately turned their attention to Liu Ye. The maniacal leopard, which was being distracted by the blind player, suddenly stopped. The player cursed, confused, exclaiming why the creature had stopped following him. Meanwhile, Liu Ye kept running, oblivious to anything unusual. However, a monster suddenly leaped at him. With no time to react, he tried to grab it, but the force of the charge made him lose his balance. The beast brutally threw him against a wall. The impact was violent. The other players, noticing the commotion, stopped and looked back. Seeing the scene, they cried out in shock. Monsters were coming from all directions, converging directly on Liu Ye. Confusion swept through the group. They couldn't understand why all the creatures were suddenly focused on him. It was then that Liu Ye glowed with fire, and his gaze met Wuji's. The smile on the player's face revealed his intentions. Liu Ye immediately understood what had happened. Without hesitation, Blazing Fire dashed off to help Liu Ye. He ordered the others to return to the original shelter, saying he would try to rescue him. The team members called out to him, confused by his decision. As he ran, Wuji watched him and thought he was completely insane. At this rate, he wouldn't make it back alive. He told the others that Blazing Fire seemed determined, but Liu Ye had now become a burden to the team. One of the players wanted to protest, but his attention was diverted by the sound of crumbling buildings. The man-eating leopard was back. It seemed to have shaken off the taunt's effect. With no other choice, the rest of the group decided to head back to the shelter. Meanwhile, Blazing Fire kept running toward Liu Ye. At the same time, he monitored his health bar. He ordered him not to even think about dying there. Suddenly, a monster leaped from the side. Blazing Fire noticed the attack and quickly drew his sword. With an agile strike, he tried to slash the creature's chest. However, the attack didn't even scratch the beast's hide. He was surprised to see just how tough the defense of these monsters was. The creature retaliated with a vicious swipe of its claws. Blazing Fire gritted his teeth and blocked the attack, but was forced to retreat. He backed away, watching the monsters swarm around Liu Ye. The number of enemies was overwhelming. For a moment, he believed he couldn't save him, but then something caught his attention. Among the stiffened bodies of the beasts, he noticed that Liu Ye was still resisting. The monsters held him by his arms and legs, but he wasn't giving in. Liu Ye activated his freezing ability on himself, The system immediately notified that cognition power was not currently being consumed. His health points were 5,036 out of a total of 8,040. There were only 10 seconds left before the freedom status ended. Without hesitation, Liu Ye activated the blessing skill. He spent all his knowledge power points and increased his attributes by 1,406. His stats surpassed 1,000 points, and in some cases, reached over 6,000. The blessing spread through his body, dispelling the mark's effect. He tightened his fist around the hilt of his katana. The system notified that his energy had risen to 2,712 points, and his attack power increased by 50%. With an agile movement, Liu Ye swung his blade. All the monsters around him were cut down in a single blow. At the same time, the man-eating leopard charged forward. The creature rushed past blazing fire, tearing down walls in its path. Liu Ye noticed its approach just in time. He grabbed the beast's claw at the last second, trying to hold it back. The impact made his feet slide across the ground, but he held firm. Quickly changing his strategy, Liu Ye swapped his katana for a pendulum pistol. He used the stun effect and aimed the gun at the monster's head. The moment the creature prepared to attack him, he pulled the trigger. The shot was a direct hit. Seizing the opening, he switched to a conventional model and began firing non-stop. The bullets repeatedly struck the leopard's body, until finally, the creature gave way. With a loud thud, the monster collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Liu Ye climbed onto the beast's corpse and looked around confidently. Beneath his feet, the leopard's body began to disappear. Blazing fire, motionless, watched everything in shock. His voice trembled as he muttered that Liu Ye was a liar. After all, how could a support player possess such strength? The system notified that only 50 seconds remained before the blessing's effect wore off. Liu Ye immediately ran towards the president, who was still confused. Without wasting any time, he told him they needed to get out of there. Then, he kept running. Blazing fire, noticing a pack of monsters ahead, snapped out of his shock and chased after him. As he followed, he shouted for Liu Ye to wait for him. At the shelter, the rest of the team remained at the dungeon's entrance, protecting themselves. One of the members commented that he had no idea what was happening with their president. He wasn't even sending messages, possibly afraid he wouldn't get a reply. Another player agreed with this observation. Wu Ji, puzzled, asked why they didn't just go back. After all, what player could survive under these conditions? One of the men replied that the president and Liu Ye were still alive. If their health bars hadn't dropped, it was because they were using skills that temporarily block damage. However, Liu Ye seemed particularly unlucky. No one knew exactly what happened, but for some reason, he attracted a huge number of monsters from which it was impossible to escape. This was a real problem. After saying this, the man crossed his arms and gritted his teeth in frustration. Suddenly, one of their comrades exclaimed. They had appeared on the map, not far from the shelter. Wu Ji was surprised by the news. The others, however, were euphoric. Excited, one of them warned the group that the two might bring monsters with them. He ordered everyone to prepare to defend the shelter. The team members positioned themselves at the entrance, weapons ready. One of them commented that he didn't hear any loud noises approaching. A short time later, the guild president entered the shelter alongside Liu Ye. The group, relieved, celebrated their return. The only exception was Wu Ji. He watched them with a serious expression. In his mind, that president was a big problem. Meanwhile, the players began to praise Blazing Fire. They said he was incredible, that he managed to handle an extremely difficult situation and still save Liu Ye. They claimed he truly deserved his title. Blazing Fire, however, remained silent. His fixed gaze on Liu Ye's back revealed something different. After the two moved away from the group and walked to the back of the shelter, they sat down on concrete blocks. It was then that the president finally broke the silence. He said all those pleasantries were unnecessary. They needed to rest a bit and then head to the dungeon. The players agreed with him and grew excited. Meanwhile, Wu Ji watched Liu Ye, who remained serious. Intrigued, he approached and sat down beside him. With a smile, he asked how he managed to escape. He believed it must have been a thrilling adventure. Liu Ye looked away, and for a moment recalled when the system dispelled the mark skill. Without hesitation, he replied that Wu Ji knew the reason very well, since it was his doing. Wu Ji shuddered at his words. Nervous, he waved his hand and asked, trying to play it cool, what Liu Ye meant by that. Liu Ye held his gaze and said he found it strange that Wu Ji didn't know. He explained that the blessing was a skill capable of removing any negative effect, including the mark that had been placed on him. Wu Ji's eyes widened in surprise. Liu Ye continued, stating that the mark was a level 40 skill. Only 2 people there were capable of using it. Silence hung between them. Liu Ye drew a gun. With a cold expression, he revealed that from the moment he entered, he had considered finishing Wu Ji off. However, upon talking to him, he realized something. Wuji's indecision didn't come from fear, but from his determination. He slowly stood up and pointed the gun directly at Wuji. In a firm voice, he said that there was only one way to solve this. Wuji remained still and silent. Wuji cried out, shocked by what was happening. To him, this was absurd. They were partners, not enemies. The rest of the team stood alert, watching the conflict unfold, not fully understanding the situation. Meanwhile, Wuji wore a cynical smile. He found it ironic that Liu Ye was about to be killed with a gun, just like in a movie. To him, this scene only reinforced the need to isolate Liu Ye from the team. Besides, if the mark ability was level 40 and only 2 people could use it, then Liu Ye was certain that Wuji was the one who activated it. One of the players, outraged, yelled at Liu Ye, questioning his actions. However, Blazing Fire remained seated, not intervening. Liu Ye just watched, a faint smile on his face. Wuji, still trying to defend himself, pounded his chest. He claimed he had only asked how Liu Ye escaped the monsters, and suddenly a gun was pointed at him. His expression showed indignation as he turned to the president, looking for support. He wanted to know if this was really acceptable within the team. Blazing Fire remained silent. Wuji insisted, pointing out that Liu Ye probably wanted to kill him just for being another support fighter. If that happened, he would be the only one with that power. Wuji feared that Liu Ye would start imposing his own conditions, and that the president would end up giving in to them just to get through the dungeon. To him, this was all wrong. He then looked at the others and demanded they pay attention. He wanted everyone to see that Liu Ye was dead weight and had no right to remain on the team. Liu Ye, for his part, just kept watching calmly. To him, the situation was clear. Wuji was the one truly responsible for all of this. Turning back to the president, Wuji insisted that he needed to be replaced. One team member tried to intervene, asking them to leave the discussion for later, when they were safe. However, Blazing Fire stood up and placed a hand on the player's shoulder, stopping him. His attitude indicated that the conflict had to be resolved right here and now. Wuji grew even more apprehensive. To him, Blazing Fire was completely mistaken. It was then that the president stepped forward and firmly grabbed Liu Ye's gun, forcing him to let it go. His gaze was filled with disapproval as he stared at Wuji, demanding an explanation. For a moment, Wuji hesitated, unsure how to react. Still confused, he felt a sudden pressure on his neck. The president had grabbed him forcefully. The question came out harsh. Why was he constantly trying to create disharmony among the team members? The tight grip made it hard for him to breathe, and Wuji wondered where the president got so much strength. Trying to catch his breath, he gritted his teeth and asked what exactly was going on. Blazing Fire, without releasing his throat, stated with conviction that he trusted Liu Ye far more than Wuji could ever imagine. Wuji, still in disbelief, argued that he didn't understand the situation. After all, it was Liu Ye who had pointed the gun first, but his excuse was ignored. The president then activated his ability. His voice was firm as he declared that Liu Ye would never have done that without a reason. The shock washed over Wuji. He couldn't believe the president trusted Liu Ye so much that he would ignore his words. To him, this was unfair. He hadn't done anything wrong, but before he could say anything else, the Shadow Blood Shell ability was activated. A viscous red liquid completely enveloped him, trapping him inside the bloody shell. His body was sealed, and his health began to gradually decrease. He tried to activate a recovery skill, but realized in despair that he was completely blocked. As his health drained away, Wuji started to panic. Staggering, he tried to approach Liu Ye and, in a final act of desperation, grabbed his throat. His eyes were filled with terror, his breathing erratic. Then suddenly, his body went still. The last bit of air escaped his lungs. Powerless, he fell to his knees. His health hit 0. In an instant, he vanished. The bloody shell dissipated, splashing onto the ground before returning to Blazing Fire. Liu Ye, who had watched everything, finally broke the silence, calling out to his comrade. Then he sat down and murmured a thank you, smiling faintly. His mind replayed the moments when he faced all those monsters alone. A disturbing thought occurred to him. If he hadn't done that, he might have been forced to kill all his teammates. After a few moments of silence, Blazing Fire turned to Liu Ye. With a serious look, he made an unexpected proposal. He wanted Liu Ye to join the new order. Then, he added a promise. Within the guild, he would have the highest position. Blazing Fire apologized for killing Wuji earlier. He knew there was bad blood with the New Order members, but he believed recruiting a strong player like Liu Ye was worth overlooking past conflicts. The guild members were surprised by their president's request. Never before had he shown so much hesitation when inviting someone to the New Order. Plus, he was offering exceptional conditions, something unheard of. One of the players pointed out that everyone else in the guild had to pass multiple selection stages. He didn't understand what made Liu Ye so special to get a direct invitation. Liu Ye, in turn, asked an unexpected question. What was the price? Blazing Fire was surprised by the question. Before he could answer, another player jumped in, calling the question absurd. To him, it made more sense for Liu Ye to hear the benefits before even thinking about the costs. However, Liu Ye explained that when joining a guild, you shouldn't just consider the positives. The most important thing was to understand the price. The guild president kept a confident gaze on Liu Ye. Then, he lowered his head and smiled. He said Liu Ye wouldn't have to pay anything. However, Liu Ye didn't believe him. He knew that when the time came to pay up, he likely wouldn't be willing to accept the cost. The real price was the willingness to sacrifice everything when the guild needed it, including levels and valuable equipment. In return, he would receive generous compensation. Liu Ye frowned and looked at him suspiciously. To him, crossing the uncontrolled zone dungeon would inevitably lead to a massacre. His words had an immediate impact. The president and the guild members became alert. After a moment's hesitation, Blazing Fire nervously replied that he didn't believe it would end that way. He claimed the probability was minimal. Liu Ye, however, didn't seem convinced. He said that many promises had been made without any guarantee they'd be kept. Blazing Fire remained silent, watching him closely. Liu Ye continued, stating he was willing to form an alliance, but he would never give up his equipment or his level. Furthermore, he wouldn't play with anyone else after this dungeon. The players considered his words an insult. To them, Liu Ye had no idea how great this offer was. The annual salary for guild members was over 2 million. The only price was giving up your own equipment during the game. In their view, Liu Ye had to be either a fool or a lunatic. Blazing Fire, however, just sat on a concrete block and sighed. He admitted it was a shame to lose such a promising player, but he also understood that not everything revolved around the new order. The Union was still a viable option. Liu Ye smiled and thanked him for understanding. As he watched Blazing Fire's calm expression, his thoughts drifted to the past. If he hadn't been through so much stress and known the real importance of gear and levels for survival, his decision might have been different. With his current strength, even the president of the new order was personally inviting him to the guild. For many, this would be a huge opportunity. Looking down, Liu Ye mulled over the possibility. For a moment, he felt a slight pang of regret for rejecting the offer. However, he quickly pushed those thoughts aside. With a faint smile, he reminded himself there was no need to apologize. The only reason the president wanted to recruit him was his strength. If he kept getting stronger and stayed alive, more and more people would seek him out. Meanwhile, Blazing Fire stared at the chat window with a grim expression. In the chat, a player named Bai Shou wished everyone good luck. He wrote that the first uncontrolled zone dungeon would be special. It would have 10% of the membrane's computing power. After a few moments, he added that one of the conditions for a perfect clear of a special dungeon was facing a desperate situation. He also mentioned that he had failed completely on his last attempt. Not only did he fail to clear it, but all of his allies died. Now he didn't even know how long it would take to recruit new members. Reading this message, the president gritted his teeth. He cursed mentally, thinking about the implications of that information. If one of the conditions for clearing it really involved a desperate situation, then things could get even more complicated. His gaze fell on Liu Ye. He thought he'd failed the first step by trying to bribe him, but he knew his strength was still an essential asset. He had to keep pushing. Meanwhile, in the chat, Zeno commented that they seemed to be on the move. He stated that the group was heading to an uncontrolled zone to find the computing power membrane. Baisho added that 50% of that power was available. He said they would soon see how much each of them could take for themselves. Chino chimed in, mentioning that both the Chaos Zone and the Danger Zone also had 10% of this power. However, he didn't think it was worth investing in them. Another player backed this up, explaining that the cost-benefit ratio was better in the uncontrolled zone. There, it was possible to get 10% of the computing power all at once. In the Danger Zone and Chaos Zone, however, you could only get 1% per attempt, even though the difficulty level was the same. Zhuanshou suggested they send players who could handle the situation as best as possible. This information made the president think, maybe it was better to recruit a player who was a good team player, like Strikes. If a massacre really happened and Liu Ye refused to cooperate, he would have to use Strikes to eliminate him. Deep down, he hoped it wouldn't come to that. After that, they continued their journey. Liu Ye reflected that by temporarily joining the New Order's team, he would have the chance to witness the guild's full strength in action. This way, the assault on the uncontrolled zone's dungeons could begin. The team had a main tank, a player known as Fresh Meat Fan, as well as a support tank, who was the president of the New Order himself. There was also a support fighter who never removed his blindfold, and a damage dealer who wielded twin swords with lethal precision. Additionally, a damage-gathering specialist stealthily eliminated monsters, playing a crucial role on the team. With impeccable coordination, the group took only 4 hours to clear a level 50 dungeon. As they ventured deeper into the uncontrolled zone, the number of cleared dungeons increased. On the 4th day, the group had already completed 12 dungeons. It was then that Liu Ye reached level 50. The achievement brought satisfaction, especially since reaching this level unlocked the special level 50 Rebirth power ability. Before him, 2 skills were available to choose from: cooldown reset and scan. The first skill allowed him to reset the cooldown of all other abilities, but it had a 12-hour recharge time. The second skill made it possible to scan the area map within a 1,000-meter radius, identifying resources, living creatures, and nearby players. However, every hour, it consumed 100 cognition points at a rate of 10 points per second. This ability had no cooldown, and for every 10 levels, the scan radius increased by 100 meters. On the 3rd day in the uncontrolled zone, Liu Ye had reached level 50. On the 6th day, the team finally found what the guild president had been looking for. Upon spotting the portal to the special dungeon in the uncontrolled zone, Blazing Fire couldn't contain his happiness. Shortly after, a new player appeared to replace Wuji, who had died earlier. Before that, the guild president had to temporarily invite a second-tier member to fill the spot. Meanwhile, Strikes was running through the narrow streets between ruined buildings. With a precise leap, he launched himself from the ground and landed atop a building, where a team awaited him at the dungeon entrance. He paused for a moment and looked around. Currently at level 56, it was clear his presence energized the team members. As soon as he arrived, everyone showed their relief. Strike smiled and gave a thumbs up before taunting them. He said he had already warned those brainless chickens not to advance without him. The players' smiles vanished instantly. For a few seconds, no one said anything, until one of them retorted, reminding him that the same rule applied to him. Strikes just laughed, then waved to the guild president and cleared his throat, trying to hide his embarrassment. He said that no one had informed him of the situation. Blazing Fire remained silent, giving him a weary look. Liu Ye, who was watching the scene intently, analyzed the newcomer. He recognized him as Strikes, one of the top 5 players in Met World before his reincarnation. Besides, he had already defeated a copy of Strikes in the Mirror Realm. However, he wasn't sure how strong he was compared to his real version. As Liu Ye pondered, Strikes finally turned his attention to one of the team members. He approached the support player and stopped beside him. Strikes then asked if he was the so-called Liu Ye. The player looked at him and smiled. He said the guild president mentioned that Shine was strong enough to be compared to Strikes' little toe. Hearing this, Blazing Fire and the other team members grew visibly tense. Liu Ye frowned. If Strikes was comparing him to a toe, then maybe it needed to be ripped off. He should just pray he wouldn't have to pay with his own life. Blazing Fire interrupted the conversation, scolding Strikes. He told him to stop talking nonsense. Strikes, in turn, apologized to Liu Ye, explaining that he had a habit of saying impulsive things, but that he didn't have a bad temper. Then, he looked at the guild president and added that if Liu Ye was really as strong as his toe, then that was a good thing. Before he could say anything else, Blazing Fire raised a finger and ordered the others to take him into the dungeon. The players grabbed Strikes and dragged him toward the portal. They said that since he was so powerful, he should go first and prove his words with action. Strikes protested, claiming he wasn't like them and didn't need to be pushed. Blazing Fire watched the team depart and sighed. He wondered how he had managed to get that man into the guild. Now, alone with Liu Ye, he turned his attention back to the dungeon entrance. Before them was the portal to the long-awaited special dungeon of the uncontrolled zone. To calm his excitement, he took a deep breath before turning to Liu Ye. He told him that the new order's true objective in this area was that dungeon. Regardless of what happened during the raid, the guild would be in Liu Ye's debt. Liu Ye was surprised by the statement. This only heightened his curiosity. What exactly was the guild president seeking inside that special dungeon? Blazing Fire, without taking his eyes off the portal, exuded confidence. After a moment, he took a few steps forward and ordered Liu Ye to follow him. Before entering the dungeon, Liu Ye reflected on his situation. In his past life, he never had the chance to speak directly with the president of the new order. As a low-level player at the time, all he knew were rumors, stories that described the guild leader as a ruthless man, indifferent to the lives of others. However, after spending a few days under his leadership, Liu Ye began to realize the reality was more complex than he had imagined. For a brief moment, he considered the possibility that they could become friends, but he quickly dismissed the thought. True friendships only formed between those with similar interests, and what he felt now was just a reflection of the temporary pleasure of teamwork. Deep down, he knew that if a conflict arose between him and the new order, there would be no room for companionship. The only person he could trust was his sister. If circumstances placed them on opposite sides, he would have to accept the guild as an enemy and fight with everything he had to survive. With this resolution in mind, he stepped through the portal. The moment he did, the environment around him changed abruptly. The scene unfolding before him wasn't real. It was a memory recorded in the location. Two figures watched with satisfaction as something moved inside an incubation chamber. The creature had been born successfully. After removing it from the incubator, the scientists confined it to an isolated room to monitor its growth. One of them, excited, commented on the experiment's success, praising the power of technology. The Research Institute's director, pleased with the progress, asked about the brainwashing process applied to the creature. The response wasn't encouraging. All the methods tested so far had only served to irritate it further. Suddenly, without warning, the creature began to move at an alarming speed. Before the scientist could react, the monster shattered the containment glass and charged at the director. In the scattered fragments on the floor, its reflection revealed a terrifying image. In the midst of the chaos, one of the scientists, gravely injured, crawled to a table. With what little strength he had left, he warned the others to stop the creature's escape. The director, filled with dread, made a desperate decision. He shot to his feet and, with a shout full of urgency, declared they needed to destroy it. Then, he slammed a large red button. The scene shifted again, bringing Liu Ye and the rest of the team back to reality. They now stood on a mountaintop before the entrance to the Research Institute. The group paused for a moment, surveying the area. Liu Ye recognized the familiar pattern. Another special dungeon with cutscenes integrated into the narrative. As he watched, Blazing Fire reviewed the mission information provided by the system. The interface confirmed the dungeon mission had been generated and that teleportation was disabled. Mission: an experiment gone wrong. The objective was to transport the Screaming Serpent's life source to membrane number 304, located in the core of the Research Institute, for the incubation of ancient organisms. The mission, however, had strict rules. The life source could not be removed from the player's inventory. Their lives were directly connected to the item. Anyone who broke the bottle would die instantly. In a matter of seconds, a bottle appeared in each player's hands. Blazing Fire assessed the situation and concluded that everyone had received the life source. For them to succeed, they would ideally need to reach the destination without any casualties. Taking a deep breath, the guild leader signaled it was time to move forward. Liu Ye held the bottle firmly, examining it closely. Up to this point, he had only been in 2 dungeons with cutscenes, one of them during the special mission with Wei Shi. As the group prepared to move on, no one noticed the presence looming above them. High above, a shadow moved silently, watching their every step. The calm was shattered by a deafening scream. A colossal serpent suddenly appeared, its voice reverberating across the entire mountain. The group spun around immediately, a chill running down their spines as they faced the creature. Blazing Fire reacted quickly, trying to coordinate the players and instructing them to get into combat formation. However, before they could react, the serpent let out a second scream, this time releasing a powerful sound wave. The impact was devastating. Several players dropped to their knees, letting go of their bottles as they clutched their ears in agony. The moment the glass bottles shattered against the ground, their holders' bodies began to dissolve rapidly. The system soon announced the tragic result. 3 team members have died. Observing the scattered fragments on the ground, his gaze hardened. He realized he had just lost 3 bottles. The system notified Liu Ye of the condition that had been imposed on him. Watching the creature closely, he noticed Strikes was already charging towards it. The warrior seemed determined to face the serpent on his own. He ignored all caution. The team, noticing his impulsive move, reacted with concern. After losing 3 members, no one wanted to witness another death. Strikes showed no hesitation and launched himself at the monster with impressive speed. His intention was clear. He wanted to avenge the comrades who had perished. The impact of his strike was powerful. To his surprise, the blade caused no apparent damage to the serpent. Before he could react, the creature opened its massive mouth. In one swift, precise motion, it swallowed him whole. The rest of the team watched the scene in shock. Some had already expected a similar outcome. Others were speechless at how quickly they had lost another member. Showing no further interest in the remaining players, the serpent moved away. It disappeared into the forest. It was then that a detail caught the guild president's attention. The liquid from the deceased players' bottles began to distribute itself among the remaining ones. He quickly understood what this meant. To complete the mission perfectly, it wasn't necessary for everyone to reach the destination. only for the 10 parts of the life source to be delivered. Meanwhile, some players were still discussing strikes. The possibility that he was still alive was raised. Upon checking the team list, they confirmed his name was still active. This indicated he was still inside the serpent. Perhaps there was a way to rescue him. Faced with uncertainty on how to fight the monster, some team members began discussing strategies. The guild president quickly shut down the conversation. He seemed confident that if Strikes had survived this long, he still had a chance to escape. The most important thing right now was to head to the research institute and complete the mission. Liu Ye analyzed the situation carefully. The president's actions reinforced his suspicions that he was aiming for a perfect run of the dungeon. The memory of when he himself had received 1% computing power for a flawless play came to his mind. He began to wonder if blazing fire was after the same benefit. With no other choice, the group continued on. They maintained a fast pace towards the institute. 20 minutes later, as they neared their destination, one of the players checked the team map. He made a disturbing discovery. Strikes was on the move. He was moving at an abnormal speed. At first, they thought he might be running to catch up with them. They soon realized something was wrong. The conclusion came almost immediately. It wasn't Strikes who was moving, but the creature that had swallowed him. The warning came too late. Suddenly, one of the players noticed movement in the nearby bushes. He alerted the president. Blazing fire stopped in his tracks. He turned just in time to see a screaming serpent emerging from the vegetation. Its mouth was wide open, ready to attack him. Reacting with speed, he activated the Blood Shadow skill. He dodged the attack at the last second. As soon as he repositioned himself, he quickly assessed the situation. He ordered the players to get into their combat stances. At the same time, he instructed Strikes to attack the creature from the inside if he was still alive. The serpent, noticing the movement around it, redirected its attention to the players. The players decided to attack the serpent together. As they advanced, they landed blows on the monster, but their attacks seemed to have no effect. The creature, seemingly impenetrable, remained unharmed. Suddenly, the snake swung its tail violently. Several players were thrown aside, hitting the ground hard. They quickly recovered, restoring their health. Meanwhile, one of the fighters used a whip to strike the creature's face. He tried to distract it using a taunt skill, moving from side to side. Without hesitation, he ran in the opposite direction of the others, speeding past the guild president, who was waiting for a chance to face the monster. The serpent then let out a deafening roar. Sound waves spread across the battlefield. One of the players had no time to react. His bottle shattered instantly. In an instant, his body began to disintegrate. Terrified, he realized his death was inevitable. The rest of the group shouted his name, but nothing could be done. Blazing Fire and Liu Ye silently watched the spot where their comrade had been just seconds before. The impact of the loss was clear. Another team member, still shaken, brought news about Strikes. The player trapped inside the serpent reported that its internal defense was incredibly tough. He couldn't harm it from the inside. Blazing Fire turned his gaze back to the imposing creature. Up close, he noticed a peculiar detail. The monster's structure resembled an insect more than a snake. This explained its abnormal resistance. Liu Ye quickly understood the greatest danger of the situation. Since the bottles couldn't be stored in the inventory, the serpent simply destroyed them with its sound waves. Every blow was a direct threat to everyone's life. The tension mounted. The possibility that nearly the entire team would perish right at the start of the dungeon seemed real. Silence fell for a moment. Without warning, the screaming serpent began to move again. To everyone's surprise, it turned and disappeared into the forest. The players were confused. Why would the creature leave them alive after eliminating 2 of them? As they tried to find an explanation, they noticed that the liquid from the broken bottle had been redistributed among the remaining flasks. The fluid's hue became brighter. Blazing Fire analyzed the situation and began to form a hypothesis. The monster wasn't just attacking randomly, it was, in a way, testing them. If a perfect clear was really the president's goal, Liu Ye pondered what it would take to achieve it. Killing the serpent might not be the way. The real objective could be to connect all the remaining life sources. Blazing Fire ordered everyone to stay alert. Now that the monster had moved away, they had a chance to reach the research institute. Without wasting time, they set off. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a huge building. There was a massive hole in the wall, indicating something had escaped. One of the players checked the map and alerted the president. The serpent was still nearby. Blazing Fire quickly assessed the situation. To buy time, he made a drastic decision. He ordered one of the players to break his own bottle. The chosen one hesitated, surprised by the order. Another player intervened, arguing they couldn't afford to lose anyone else. Blazing Fire, however, was adamant. With such a large number of players, it would be impossible to defeat the creature. What they needed now was speed, not brute force. If they could lure the serpent away, they would have time to explore the institute. Faced with the imposed decision, the player gritted his teeth and broke his bottle. The system notified the death of another team member. As soon as the flask shattered, The screaming serpent immediately turned in the opposite direction. The strategy had worked. They had distracted the monster. The players continued on their way, relieved. One of them, excited, praised the genius of the plan. Another stated they should thank the captain. Thanks to him, they now had a way to track the dungeon boss's movements. Blazing Fire checked the map and confirmed his theory. Meanwhile, Liu Ye began to reflect. Before, he refused to spend money on equipment and levels. Now, if Blazing Fire knew how to get a perfect clear, he could become a target as soon as they reached the Institute. In that kind of environment, surrounding him would be easy. Blazing Fire ordered them to hurry. The entrance to the Institute was already visible. The group ran through the clearing that led to the building. Reaching the stairs, they moved quickly towards the entrance. Liu Ye, however, suddenly stopped. A thought crossed his mind. He couldn't let them surround him in there. The other players noticed his hesitation. They stopped at the top of the stairs and asked what was wrong. Without looking away, Liu Ye turned to Blazing Fire. He asked a single question. What was the easiest way to finish this mission? Everyone listened but said nothing, figuring he should prepare for a battle against them. The president frowned and walked to the edge of the stairs. In a serious tone, he stated that Liu Ye was mistaken. The level of this dungeon was extremely high, and he had no intention of harming him. His only goal was to complete the mission. If Liu Ye didn't trust him, he could wait outside while the three of them finished the task. Despite the unknown dangers inside the Institute, the threat of the serpent outside was much greater. Liu Ye remained silent, assessing the situation. One of the players called out to him, questioning his hesitation. He wanted to know why Liu Ye distrusted the president. He thought it was an absurd joke. Another player agreed, pointing out they had cooperated for a long time. There was no reason to doubt him now. Did Liu Ye really expect the president to treat him like a brother? Liu Ye frowned, weighing his options. He discreetly glanced at the map. By his calculations, strikes would arrive in about 10 minutes. The serpent attacked every 20 minutes. Which meant the next attack would be in 13 minutes. If he was going to act, it had to be before the president met up with strikes. Blazing Fire turned to the entrance and, with a calm smile, stated that no one would be forced into anything. They just needed to complete the mission. With that, he entered the Institute. The other players, annoyed, insulted Liu Ye. They called him a traitor, saying they couldn't trust him at a crucial moment. They would go on without him. Liu Ye gripped his katana and assessed his chances. The freeze status lasted for 10 seconds. The blessing remained active for 60. Counting strikes, he faced 4 opponents with high combat power. If he used the freeze in conjunction with the blessing, he might have a chance to defeat them. If he made a mistake, he would lose his alliance with the New Order Guild. If he hesitated, all his efforts would be wasted. Blazing Fire noticed his indecision and turned around, frowning. The guild members questioned Liu Ye with contempt. Did he really intend to attack them? Forget the alliance. His life was already practically forfeit. They weren't going to dirty their hands killing him. Liu Ye felt the answer was clear. Without further hesitation, he activated the freeze status and the blessing. His strength and speed increased dramatically. In an instant, he shot towards the guild president, who activated his skill. Blazing Fire's body vanished before his eyes. The players shouted, incredulous at Liu Ye's decision. They claimed he was making a grave mistake and wouldn't last long. Before they could react, Liu Ye swung his katana and cut one of the players in half. The victim's body fell to the ground. Before disappearing, the stunned player muttered that it wasn't possible. The system notified him of a teammate's death. Another player charged forward furiously, weaving side to side to try and trick him. Liu Ye waited for the right moment. He tightened his grip on his weapon, lunged forward, and delivered a precise strike. The system again notified him of a team member's death. Liu Ye checked the map. Blazing Fire was still in the same spot. Strikes, however, was getting closer and closer. Liu Ye gathered all his strength and attacked fiercely, shattering a part of the building's side. Debris rained down everywhere. Looking around, he checked the president's health bar. His HP was still full. This meant that despite the impact, he hadn't managed to hit him. He checked the map once more. Blazing Fire was still there, but there was no sign of him among the rubble. What kind of skill was that? Liu Ye then realized that Strikes was very close. The system notified him that the freeze status had expired. Looking at the debris before him, Liu Ye shouted defiantly, calling out to the president. He asked if he was just a coward, unable to face him directly. Blazing Fire remained silent, not revealing himself. The system then notified him that the blessing's time had also expired. Liu Ye grumbled to himself. If Blazing Fire wanted to make a habit of his cowardice, he'd just stay hidden. However, Strikes had already arrived. Seconds later, the player's figure emerged in the clearing. Liu Ye noticed the movement on the map. Blazing Fire had moved towards his ally. Emerging from his invisible state, the guild president appeared with a malicious smile. He mocked Liu Ye, praising his courage. However, he pointed out that when facing the man-eating leopards, Liu Ye had revealed all his trump cards. Blazing Fire stated that, in the end, He had only sacrificed 2 of his men. Liu Ye didn't reply, just frowned. Strikes in turn unsheathed his sword. Without hesitation, he and Blazing Fire charged forward together to attack him. Liu Ye struggles to block the simultaneous attacks of 2 opponents. He stares fixedly at his adversaries. One of the men claims that Liu Ye is not strong and questions whether their leader has grown weak. But his partner tells him to shut up and kill him first. Liu Ye then prepares his blade for a counterattack. The blonde man watches the action closely. His companion says that now is the time and encourages him to use his short sword. Liu Ye defends against a strike, and the attacker reveals that he has used that sword ever since he obtained his key. He then states that his opponent should feel honored to die by that blade. Liu Ye activates his restart and restraint abilities. A massive slash is unleashed across the area. The man turns to look at the result of the strike. A huge fissure opens in the ground in front of him. Liu Ye points his sword forward and activates his blessing. He then decides to increase all of his attributes. A system notification displays his new stats. Liu Ye now faces the man head-on. The opponent admits that the clan leader was right about his abilities and uses his own restraint. The ability prevents the target from dealing damage for 30 seconds unless attacked first. He then places his blade against Liu Ye's neck. The system informs that Liu Ye is under restraint and unable to attack the target. The man mocks him, claiming that his ability is the perfect counter and that he is his natural enemy. Liu Ye simply jumps away from danger. He then dashes through the air toward the other opponent. The blonde man activates Kai sharing. This ability mixes his attributes with those of the target for 10 minutes. Liu Ye advances to attack the dark-haired man. The restraint finally ends and his stats are released. The man celebrates that his attributes have doubled and praises his clan leader's ability, saying that he is almost at his level. Liu Ye watches him closely. He then decides to retreat. Liu Ye comments that they seem well prepared and that they planned this a long time ago. But the opponent responds that they are just being cautious and that he is not such a big threat. Liu Ye then equips his pistol. The adversary questions the long-range weapon and mentions having heard about his lock ability. He then challenges him to use the ability on him, saying he will stand still to see if he can kill him. A system notification informs that the restraint and one of the blessings have ended. The man provokes him to attack, while his partner warns him not to be arrogant, as the restraint has ended. Liu Ye points the weapon and says, "As you wish," and the partner warns about the power of that weapon. But the opponent says not to worry, as it is a normal weapon and he can easily dodge it. Liu Ye activates his freezing lock, immobilizing the adversary. The man wonders how that is possible. He questions whether the weapon could be his Kai weapon, but his partner thinks it is impossible, since he also uses a katana. Liu Ye simply bids farewell to his opponent. A system notification shows that his next attack will deal triple damage. The leader asks if he can escape the lock, but the man says no, though he has an immunity ability for 10 seconds. His partner scolds him, saying that now Liu Ye only needs to destroy their bottles. The man turns around with a different expression on his face. He explains that he placed the bottles on his back and suggests that the leader use his shadow dive as a precaution. But the leader reveals that he has already used that ability to escape the previous attack. A shot pierces through the immobilized man. The system informs that his teammate has died, and he realizes that the shot pierced through his immunity and destroyed the bottles. The man screams that it can't be. He then steps back and stumbles. His body begins to break apart into particles. He wonders if he lost, but promises that he will win next time. A notification confirms the death of his teammate, and Liu Ye lowers his head. He turns around to leave. 2 items left behind float on the ground. Liu Ye says that he feels no joy in victory, because he knows they will return to seek revenge. He then comments that there will always be enemies on his journey, but these ones are especially troublesome. However, he states that he is not afraid of them in the game, since their power only affects him in reality. That is until the Yuan world descends. Suddenly, a pair of threatening eyes emerges from the darkness behind him. Liu Ye stares into the darkness ahead. He quickly leaps away. He then turns around and curses. A giant serpent appears before Liu Ye. The creature twists its body and moves away. He wonders if it is really leaving. Liu Ye then deduces that the serpent is sparing him because he destroyed the bottles. He runs, stating that he needs to be fast to finish the mission within 20 minutes, or he will be the next to die. Liu Ye advances through a long corridor. At the end of the path, he finds a large glass container. He approaches the object. Liu Ye states that this must be the place. He holds an item and notices that there are no monsters or researchers, concluding that the serpent is the only living thing there. He then questions the idea of being the only living thing. Liu Ye remembers the puppet's secret dungeon, which also had only one living being that gave the mission to deceive the players. He then speculates whether the current mission was given by the serpent. Recalling the previous mission, he understands that the way to complete it perfectly was to fulfill the puppet's wish. Liu Ye wonders if fulfilling the creature's wish is the key to perfectly completing secret dungeons. Liu Ye understands that the monster outside could have killed everyone, but left after a few deaths, which can only be its trick. And to complete the dungeon perfectly, he needs to fulfill the creature's wish. He then wonders what that wish might be. If the serpent gave the mission, the objective of creating another would not be to kill it, but rather to give it a companion, perhaps because it feels lonely or because there is no other way. Liu Ye wonders why he had such a thought. He considers it a real possibility, but first he needs to test whether the serpent can enter the laboratory. He then turns around and ponders what he will do if it cannot enter. Liu Ye decides to wait 20 minutes, and if the serpent does not attack, he will try to persuade it to leave with him. He remembers that the Imperial Soul engraving allows a monster to possess its master's weapon. A memory takes him back to the equipment shop, where he discovered that the members of the New Order were already at level 50. He regrets not having prepared better, since he could not ask the others to wait for him. Then, he recalls seeing several types of enhancement orbs. There, he saw that enhancement orbs and engraving orbs could be exchanged for dungeon essence. He realizes that the items are convenient and notices something else available for exchange. Liu Ye has the impression that those items will be useful to him later. He exchanged his essence for 3 orbs of each, even though the success rate was only 1%. He then wonders if he is being too hasty and relying too much on luck. A movement at the door of the room catches his attention. He realizes that the creature has finally arrived. Liu Ye prepares himself for what is to come. He concludes that the creature is moving outside and decides to go out to check. But he changes his mind and decides to wait to confirm whether it will not enter on purpose. 30 minutes later, he says that the time has come. The great serpent begins to move. It then advances amid the rubble of the place. The creature watches him intently. Liu Ye's legs tremble before the imposing presence. He looks up toward the creature. The head of the giant serpent stops right in front of him. He wonders what he should say, since everything would be useless if he could not communicate. The creature then asks him why he is not completing the mission. The serpent moves even closer to him. Liu Ye explains that he acted that way because he felt that it wanted to leave that place. In the distance, something heavy collides with the ground. The massive tail of the serpent strikes the ground with force. Liu Ye watches the display of power. A dark silhouette falls from the sky near them. He realizes that that monster is far too strong for a player to defeat. The creature then asks him if he has a solution. Liu Ye replies that he does have a way, but she will have to accept him as her master. The serpent raises her head and asks if he is worthy of being her master. The creature looks down at Liu Ye. He steps back but states that this is the only way. Liu Ye decides that the situation is far too risky and that he should simply leave. The serpent's face moves closer. He stops retreating and plants his foot firmly on the ground. A system notification asks whether he accepts becoming the serpent's master. A system notification asks whether he wishes to accept the serpent's proposal. Liu Ye stares at the colossal creature before him. He then confirms that he was right and accepts the offer. The system informs him that he is the serpent's master, but that he must obtain the Imperial Soul to take her out of the dungeon. A status screen displays the creature's details and abilities. The serpent then demands that he take her out of that place. Liu Ye simply agrees to the request. He holds his weapon and an orb, stating that everything now depends on the engraving. His gaze becomes focused and determined. Liu Ye realizes that the dungeon mission has disappeared, confirming that the serpent was the source and that there is no turning back. He wonders whether this is the result he wanted, as he does not want to use the orb, but also does not want to lose such a powerful monster. He reflects that he has become addicted to risky gambles, but now his chance of success is only 1%. Holding the orb, he laments that the engraving is random, forcing him to gamble everything. A new notification asks whether he wishes to use the membrane authority to alter the rules of the orb. He wonders if that is truly real. Liu Ye confirms his decision to the system. The orb in his hand begins to emit a powerful energy. The great serpent watches the action closely. The item is modified, allowing him to choose any word to engrave on the weapon. He celebrates that the process worked and decides to engrave the Imperial Soul. A system screen displays the new stats of his enhanced pistol. With the weapon in hand, Liu Ye begins to laugh. He then states that this means something important. He concludes that, once again, he has beaten the odds and emerged stronger. With a gesture, he summons the Wyvern Serpent. He bares his teeth in a grin. A notification congratulates him for perfectly completing the dungeon. The system calculates the rewards and raises his level to 57. A new screen displays his updated attributes and abilities. His weapon can now summon the serpent, and his combat power is recalculated by the system. A system notification informs him that, as his computation power exceeded 5%, he obtained the new ability Architect. He then finds himself in a wilderness area, amid the ruins of a city. His feet touch the ground. Liu Ye observes the desolate horizon before him. The sun begins to break through the dark clouds. He turns around with a smile on his face. Liu Ye decides that it is time to return to Mushu City. With 17 days remaining until the descent of the Yuan world, the scene shifts to Liu Ye's home in the real world. Sitting in his room, he feels completely exhausted after days of intense training and dungeon exploration. He reflects that it was worth it, as he is now only 3 levels away from 60 and has obtained a powerful monster like the serpent. Then he wonders how Ah Yun is doing and whether she has already obtained her key. He decides that he should go see her, as he has neglected her all this time. He approaches the door, thinking that he should have checked on her from time to time and perhaps taken her to train with him. When he reaches the door, he hears a female voice inside praising the growth of someone called Nian Chu. A young man inside then replies that the same goes for her and asks to check the goods for his brother. Liu Ye hears a female voice asking what they are doing and telling them to stop. He freezes and turns around. He runs away, deciding that it would be better to meet her inside the game. Liu Ye laments not having stayed online the previous night, as now Ah Yun and her friend are offline. He then decides that for now he will upgrade his equipment and then rest for a while. His level is now 57, which allows him to use level 60 equipment. He considers buying what he needs with money, remembering that the New Order clan still has not paid him. A new message arrives from the leader of the New Order with his payment. Liu Ye opens the message and wonders what he wants. He then questions whether the leader wants reconciliation, even knowing that he benefited from the clan's losses. In the message, the man explains that the situation forced him to act that way, and Liu Ye replies that it is fine. He finds the New Order leader's behavior strange, and wonders what he wants to gain from this. Then he decides to ignore him for now to focus on increasing his combat ability before the peak of the Yuan world. Another message arrives and opens automatically. He opens the message, certain that it must be from Ah Yun. Ah Yun's message informs him that she and Nian Chu have already obtained their kiss and are training in the mirrored secret zone. Liu Ye then decides that he will take a look at the mirrored secret zone. He approaches the entrance of the place. A player comments that the New Order has withdrawn from the mirrored secret zone and that he prefers them over Backyard Garden, which uses real-life information to threaten others. In the distance, a player screams as he is immobilized by 2 other men. A man next to Liu Ye explains that the player offended a member of Backyard Garden and has been trapped there for 5 days. Liu Ye clarifies that even if he logs out, the player will reappear in the same place and remain trapped. A gambler celebrates that the goddesses have won again and continue to bring him money. The crowd praises the 2 sisters for being beautiful and extremely strong, maintaining a winning streak since they arrived. Ah Yun and Nian Chu pose with their weapons. The surrounding players congratulate them, calling them amazing and a rare combination of strength and beauty. Liu Ye finally recognizes them as Ah Yun and Nian Chu. He observes the crowd and wonders what happened to the 2 of them to become so popular. Ah Yun thanks everyone for the compliments, but reminds them to keep their promises and split the money they earned. Near Liu Ye, a man wonders whether their bodies are the same in real life. Another player says that if they are like that in real life, they would be incredible, but he already feels jealous of whoever will marry them someday. A white-haired man approaches Liu Ye and tells him not to feel depressed, as there is no way to have a relationship with them. He then concludes that one can only have a relationship with that kind of beauty in their dreams. Liu Ye comments that that is a bit too much. The white-haired man asks whether he knows them or goes out with them every day. Ah Yun turns in their direction. She then approaches and stares at the men around. The man tells Liu Ye that he understands his feelings, since they are in the same boat. Suddenly Ah Yun appears behind the 2 of them, startling the man. The crowd wonders why she is walking toward Liu Ye and whether they have some kind of relationship. Liu Ye looks at her and she smiles at him. The white-haired man wonders if Liu Ye really knows her. Ah Yun jumps and hugs him, saying that he has been very busy. The crowd threatens to attack him, but someone shouts, "Big brother!" Everyone stops and one of them realizes who he is. The crowd then calls him brother-in-law. Nian Chu receives a new message. She then reads the contents of the message. A figure informs Sister Li that they were rejected again. She then scratches the wall and questions the audacity of the 2. The woman threatens that they will no longer be able to play and orders her team to capture them. Ah Yun rests on Liu Ye's shoulder, but suddenly opens her eyes. Looking over his shoulder, she states that he is there. Ghostly's messages are a series of threats and insults. Ah Yun suddenly hugs him and then hesitates. She then laments that because she was born so beautiful, even her own brother is enchanted by her. Liu Ye complains that she is too strong and that he is being suffocated by the hug. A group of uniformed people marches in formation through the hall. 3 guild members watch the movement closely. Suddenly, they are startled to see Liu Ye, Nian Chu, and Ah Yun standing on the other side. Ghost Li and her followers approach, leaving others confused about their presence and intentions. Liu Ye remains beside his companions, staring at the approaching group. In moments, they find themselves completely surrounded. The young man looks at Ghost Lee and her two guards on the other side of the hall. Liu Ye then moves in front of Nianchu and Ayun, extending his arm to protect them, but a hand grabs his arm, preventing him from moving forward. Ayun asks him to let her handle it, stating that the problem is with her. She stares at Ghost Lee, who demands that the young woman kneel and beg for forgiveness or forever give up the Yuan world. Nianchu explains to Liu Ye that Ghost Lee wants revenge because they refused a proposal to rob other players. Then Ghost Lee simply orders her men to surround them. A voice questions what they think they are doing. Now Liu Ye's small group is completely surrounded by a crowd. Liu Ye is surprised by the crowd's sudden intervention, but Ghost Lee warns them not to meddle in Backyard Garden's affairs, claiming that they will all lose. She then asks whether they are rebelling and threatens them with the consequences of offending her guild. Intimidated by the threat, some men in the crowd step back. Ayun turns her face and gives a faint smile. The young woman tells them not to worry and that everything will be resolved calmly. The trio from before advances again, shouting among the other players. Nianchu then reveals to everyone that the fight started because they rejected a proposal to steal money from players. She then apologizes with a playful expression. Liu Ye and Nianchu insist on helping, but Ayun states that she cannot ask for anything that might harm them. One of the men in the crowd begins to speak. He clenches his teeth, making a decision. Ghost Lee mocks Ayun, saying that no one would dare offend Backyard Garden because of her. But the man declares that their goddess got into trouble for everyone's sake and that they cannot act like cowards. The declaration surprises Ghost Lee while Ayun watches with a smile. He continues his speech, stating that their brother-in-law is watching and that they need to act so they can face him. Liu Ye is completely confused by the sudden declaration. Beside him, Nianchu covers her mouth while laughing at the situation. The crowd surges toward Ghost Lee's group, and one of her men suggests that they retreat since they are at a disadvantage. But she threatens them again, reminding them that offending her is the same as offending Backyard Garden. One of the players responds that everyone hates the guild, and that they will be trapped in the mirrored secret zone. Liu Ye watches the chaos, calling the crowd a bunch of bastards. Her own men restrain her as she screams that she will kill everyone, and the young man wonders if everything was resolved without him needing to intervene. The scene reveals the great tower of the mirrored secret zone. Liu Ye asks her about using the players to deal with Ghost Lee, and Ayun confirms the plan. However, she emphasizes that the situation of ordinary players oppressed by Backyard Garden has not yet been resolved. Ayun explains that they received a lot of help from these players and now wish to repay them. The young woman laments that everyone's hesitation to unite allows Backyard Garden to continue intimidating them. She then reveals that she used Ghost Lee's arrival as an opportunity to incite a revolt, with positive results. Nianchu adds that the first step has already been taken, and now they need to maintain this unity. The conversation among the three continues to unfold. Liu Ye wonders if he should have been more involved in her progress. He then realizes that he worried too much unnecessarily. After all, she is doing very well in the game and carving out her own path. A faint smile appears on his face as he watches the players in the hall. He concludes that if Ayun can unite them, they will become a great asset in the future. Liu Ye understands that even on a different path, she has a bright future ahead. In the background, the great doors of the arena finally close. The imposing structure of the secret zone rises amid the clouds. Two guild members pass by with serious expressions. A group recognizes the second team of Backyard Garden, all level 45, arriving to deal with the situation. After instructing his sister to protect herself, Liu Ye decides to leave the mirrored secret zone. He walks through the courtyard with a thoughtful expression. From a distance, the young man observes the large battalion of the enemy guild gathering. Liu Ye analyzes that, although their level is an advantage, their numbers are their true power. He continues on his way, believing that Ayun's fame will grow greatly if she resolves this crisis. With a smile, the young man decides to use the next 10 days to train, trusting that his sister can handle the problems on her own. But a sudden order to kill anyone who leaves the zone puts him on alert. Hasty footsteps run toward him. Three players confront him for ignoring them and decide to attack him. Liu Ye is confused by the sudden hostility. An announcement informs everyone that Backyard Garden members are arriving. The news causes immediate turmoil among the crowd. Ghost Lee shouts for everyone to tremble in fear and wait for punishment, questioning who dared to touch her. One of the players asks what they will do now, while Ayun steps to the front of the group. Ayun asks for calm and announces that Nianchu has gone to seek reinforcements from her family clan, reminding them that they outnumber the enemy. The group of players agrees that if they stay united, they will be unbeatable, but doubt still lingers among them. Then, she turns around and leads the crowd to negotiate, declaring that problems in the game should be resolved within the game. They approach the entrance of the mirrored secret zone. A white-haired young man peeks through the entrance and finds the silence outside strange. Suddenly his eyes widen in shock. Yun and the group see him and she asks what happened. She reassures her followers that with their numbers, there is nothing to fear. The crowd shouts in agreement, but their expressions change to pure astonishment. Outside, Liu Ye stands alone in a courtyard now filled with spheres. He then slowly turns to face the entrance. The crowd, led by Yun, recoils in shock at the scene before them. The white-haired young man stammers the word brother-in-law, unable to believe that he eliminated the reinforcement team by himself. Impressed, the other players declare that they will follow him from now on and obey his orders. In a distant location outside the control area, the situation is reported. Lord Xuan, the guild leader, asks whether all of his men were killed. One of his subordinates bows and admits that he was reckless. The Lord watches him in silence. The man remains bowed, while the rest of the team awaits the decision. With a smile, Lord Xuan says that the punishment of merely dying and resetting one's level seems too light. He then decides that 20 days of rest will be the appropriate punishment. Other members comment among themselves that, for the loss of nearly 100 players, this seems more like a reward. The subordinate raises his head, and Lord Xuan asks whether he has any problem with the decision. Immediately, the man thanks him for his mercy. Lord Xuan dismisses him, promising him a new job when he returns. He then turns around and asks what information they gathered about the player. One member reports that he has connections with the New Order and that they were interrupted while trying to investigate. Lord Xuan then realizes that the young man is a protege of Lord Zhu. He concludes that Lord Zhu must have obtained part of the computational power and handed it over to the player, explaining his strength. Lord Xuan questions why Lord Zhu would entrust so much power to a mere player. He then plans to kill the young man in the area of madness, where the agreement of the four lords does not apply. With a sinister smile, he reveals that he will blame Lord Zhu for the incident if the player is killed. Meanwhile, in the wild area, Lord Bai, leader of another faction, gazes at the horizon. At the same time, on the eastern side, Lord Qin makes the same decision as his rivals. Back in the mirrored secret zone, Liu Ye asks them to take care of his sister as he needs to leave to upgrade his equipment. He covers his face with his hand, finding the players' excitement somewhat excessive. Faced with the shouts of victory, he comments that he merely defeated them, yet they treat him as if he were immortal. The young man smiles as he realizes that the incident earned him more than 100 level 45 orbs. He then calculates how much dungeon essence he will obtain by dismantling all the items. With a jump, Liu Ye celebrates the unexpected gain that eases his worries about lacking essence. He displays a satisfied smile at the result of his actions. As he passes through a door, the young man suddenly stops and looks to the side. A man was waiting for him to ask whether he wanted to know the reason behind the great interest in the membrane's computational power. Liu Ye stares at him, listening carefully to the proposal. Liu Ye looks at the blonde-haired man who was waiting for him in the corridor. The two then enter the Mu Shu cafeteria to talk. The man explains that his objective in the wild area was the membrane's computational power. And the reason for his urgency is that this power functions as a certificate to enter the area of madness. Liu Ye recalls that, in the past, a large clan operation in the area of madness resulted in everyone's death. The man then reveals that the authority to control the Yuan world is hidden there. Shocked by the information, the young man asks whether he is serious about controlling the Yuan world. Finding the situation interesting, Liu Ye asks why he would share such an important piece of information. The blonde man questions whether he truly believed the story about the authority of the Yuan world. But since Liu Ye took the information seriously, he concludes that the young man knows something and decides to get straight to the point. He confirms that the area of madness truly contains the authority and invites him to join his team in the fight for it. The man states that he needs Liu Ye's strength and asks whether he is willing to help. With disdain, the young man asks whether he will try to kill him again to obtain the authority. Liu Ye then asks if he really thinks he is that stupid. The blonde man assures him that what happened before will not happen again because now they will explore the wild area together. He explains that the team will have few members and is not willing to fight, since computational power is required to enter the area. Then he proposes that they share the authority, but emphasizes that the final decision depends on Liu Ye obtaining the power in the wild area. He states that if he wanted to fight, he would have simply tried to invite him to obtain the computational power together. Standing up, the man says that Liu Ye does not need to give an immediate answer and can think it over. He then announces that he will go to the wild area first to obtain the computational power. Liu Ye remains seated, watching him walk away down the corridor. He reflects on the failed expedition of his past life, wondering if someone obtained the authority and made the Yuan world real. The possibility leaves him with a serious expression. The young man decides that his main goal is to preserve his strength and wait for the Yuan world to become reality. He stands up, remembering that in his previous visits he was always interrupted, but this time no one will stop him. Suddenly, a new notification surprises him. He stops in a corridor as more alerts continue to arrive. He relaxes for a moment. Upon entering an equipment room, he realizes that the messages are from other players. The interface displays his dungeon essence and the limitation of engraving only level 50 equipment. He analyzes the system, which informs him about additional engraving slots every 10 levels. The young man then calculates that he needs 6,300 essence to upgrade his 9 pieces of equipment. He does the math and realizes that to engrave all his level 50 equipment, he will need at least 8,000 essence. To upgrade everything to level 60, he calculates that he will need another 26x200 essence. The young man then gives the command to open all the loot orbs he received. The inventory fills with customized equipment that adds only strength, agility, and endurance. He orders all the items to be dismantled, receiving 29,542 dungeon essence in return. Satisfied, he confirms that the amount of essence covers all his upgrade costs. He thanks Backyard Garden for the gifts received. He then decides to upgrade all his equipment to level 60 first. The interface displays the details of his enhanced battle shirt, boots, and gauntlets. His earrings and the Badge of Wisdom also receive new attribute enhancements. Next, the upgrades to his katana and pistol are finalized. His character sheet now shows that his level has risen to 57, and his wisdom has reached 1,600. A notification informs him that, for having reached 1,000 points of wisdom, he obtained a new regeneration skill. His skill list is updated, and his overall combat capability increases. He examines his new equipment and declares that he is now strong. The young man compares his current strength to that of his past life, when his attributes were only level 1. Then, he announces that he will modify the engraving orbs, but hesitates, unsure of how to begin. He then tries to use his architect ability to modify the engraving orb and reset the cooldown time. Upon realizing that it is not possible to reset the skill, he calculates that he would need a full 2 days to engrave all of his equipment. Holding the orb, he concludes that he will need to take things slowly, but a notification informs him that the cooldown time has been reduced, and he decides to level up a few levels while waiting. The scene then shifts to the game's main lobby. The young man drops to his knees, frustrated for never having imagined he would be in such a situation. He despairs upon realizing that, to enter a dungeon, he needs players with a maximum difference of 10 levels, but most are at level 43. The realization that his own level is too high leaves him even more discouraged. Sitting on a sofa, he wonders what to do, since the UN world will become reality in just a few days. He then remembers the proposal about the Area of Madness, which hides the authority to control the game. Liu Ye reflects that to obtain such power, a player would need to be the best of all. But he considers the mission extremely dangerous, since if he fails, all his effort will have been in vain. He then begins to think of a way to avoid death at least once, such as an escape skill or temporary immunity. He then considers the possibility of being revived with his level and stats intact. An idea emerges in his mind: the reversion orb. Liu Ye gazes at an imposing skyscraper against the twilight sky. With the orb, which revives a player to their previous state, he could finally attempt to go to the Area of Madness. Satisfied with having completed the objective of upgrading his equipment to level 60, he decides to gamble the remaining essence. The young man walks confidently, thinking that a victory could earn him enough essence to upgrade everything to level 70. He then heads to the test tower section of the mirrored secret zone. The tower has 21 floors, each with an enhanced guardian designed to test the player's overall strength. To obtain the final rewards, it is necessary to clear all floors in a single run, and one of these rewards is precisely the reversion orb. A leaderboard displays the current ranking of the players who have advanced the furthest in the tower. Announcements inform that the next round of trials will begin soon, highlighting the rivalry between the ranking leaders. White Knight, a level 33 player, states that he only needs to stay calm and keep his pace. But Devil Darkness, level 32, declares that he will set a new record today. The crowd watches the scene, with one person commenting that the player's display is embarrassing. Liu Ye observes the crowd, remembering that the test tower opens once every 8 hours. He realizes that he arrived at just the right time and prepares to enter the next round. The crowd moves aside to make room for the specialists, since, aside from the 2 leaders, no one else has passed the 6th floor. 3 players comment that the Guardian on the 7th floor is extremely strong, which explains why most people get stuck there. The young man then walks toward White Knight and Devil Darkness. The other players wonder whether the newcomer is strong or just an idiot, since his level is hidden. White Knight observes the newcomer, commenting that he is brave to challenge the tower alongside them. Devil Darkness approaches Liu Ye and says that his determination motivates them to improve even more. With a smile, the young man thinks that the 2 resemble the 6th and 7th place specialists from his previous life. He remembers that they were also the first to obtain the reversion orb, and the tower challenge begins. With a determined expression, Liu Ye prepares for the start of the trial. The three are transported inside the tower, and the crowd rushes to check the rankings. One of the spectators asks his companion if he really saw what happened. The other confirms in shock that yes, he did. Determined not to let the chance slip away, the two begin to walk. They then announce the bets, asking who will reach the highest floor in the tower. A notification announces that the test tower challenge will begin soon, once the player's status is 100% restored. Next, a list of usable skills is displayed. But another notification informs that an unknown interruption prevents the cooldown reset of one of the skills. Then the system asks him to select the proportion of dungeon essence, and he chooses 100%. After the essence is deducted, the system confirms the floor rewards and Liu Ye appears in the arena. He then finds himself facing a guardian on the first floor of the tower. The guardian is a level 27, rank 1 defense specialist with no awakening abilities. Liu Ye wonders if he was too confident, since he bet all of his essence without even knowing the rules of the place. But he recovers with a smile, stating that it is not the first time he has risked everything. He believes that only by risking everything can he improve, as the guardian leaps in to attack. And to achieve absolute victory, he needs to surpass his limits at the moment their swords clash. Liu Ye blocks the opponent's strike and prepares to counterattack. His strike hits the guardian, dealing 1,936 damage. He finds the result strange, since the damage was almost equal to his total attack power, and wonders why a defense specialist is so weak. Meanwhile, in the lobby, the current ranking displays Devil Darkness and White Knight in the top positions. In the lobby, two players comment that White Knight and Devil Darkness are as strong as expected for reaching the third floor so quickly. One of them says he heard that Devil Darkness has increased his power and is confident he can reach the 15th floor. He then reveals an emblem that will allow him to enter the Sky Tower Guild directly, planning to use it to gain fame. Elsewhere, Silly Kai lets out a restrained laugh. His companion worries about the risk of the plan, since other players might realize that Ye has some combat ability. After the initial excitement, the green-haired young man begins to worry. Silly Kai reassures him, explaining that guildless players like Ye would not be that strong, and asks whether he thinks Ye could defeat the other two. But his friend raises the possibility that Ye might actually be only level 40. Silly Kai realizes the implication, stating that if Ye really is at that level, then they look in shock at the screen showing the number of bets on White Knight and Devil Darkness vastly surpassing those on Ye. Nervous, the two decide that perhaps they should believe in Ye. Inside the tower, Liu Ye stands beside a defeated guardian as the accumulated reward is displayed. He strikes the next opponent and the reward notification is updated. A screen shows the accumulated reward increasing rapidly with each defense specialist defeated. Liu Ye reaches the 7th floor of the test tower and his status is displayed. Liu Ye finds everything too easy and without challenge, wondering whether it is because his level is too high or because the guardians are defined by their attributes. Then, the guardian of the 7th floor, specialized in all attributes, appears before him. He remembers that he specialized in wisdom and wonders if the guardian is weak for lacking a Kai combo. The two opponents face each other from a distance in the vast arena. With a smile, Liu Ye states that if that is the case, then it will be a breeze. The guardian with the number 7 on his helmet prepares for the fight. As the enemy attacks, he deduces that the guardian's attributes are only twice his own, even though he has an attribute above 100. Liu Ye concludes that the 7th floor guardian is nothing special, since he also possesses the title of high-level warrior. In the lobby, a player points at the screen, shouting that Ye's speed has increased and that he has already reached the 7th floor. Other players are shocked, unable to understand how he is on the same level as White Knight and Devil Darkness. A spectator wonders what is happening with Ye and where he came from. He then scolds the crowd for shouting, saying that what matters is defeating the guardian specialized in all attributes. Turning to everyone, he explains that each attribute of the 7th floor guardian is double that of the challenger. He confidently states that Ye is just an ordinary guildless player and will be stuck on the 7th floor like the others. But the ranking updates, showing Ye advancing to the 8th floor, catching up to White Knight. The same player who doubted him is left completely shocked by what he sees. Liu Ye reaches the 8th floor of the tower. He comes face to face with a rank 2 guardian, an agility specialist. The guardian lunges with a strike, but he manages to dodge the attack. Then the enemy lands multiple hits on him while he tries to use a blocking skill. Liu Ye creates distance from the opponent and unleashes a series of attacks. His strikes hit the guardian at several points, dealing continuous damage. A notification confirms that he defeated the agility specialist and displays his accumulated reward. He realizes that the opponent's agility stat was twice that of the previous guardian. He then concludes that after the 7th floor, the guardian's attributes double. With a smile, he is transported to the 9th floor and decides that he will try not to use one of his abilities to make things more fun. The tower ranking is constantly updated, showing Ye maintaining the same pace as Devil Darkness and White Knight. In the lobby, players comment that he is keeping up with the others and wonder where he came from, since he has no clan backing. One of the spectators shouts that it is incredible for Ye to have caught up with the two, since solo players should not be capable of such a feat. Another player questions whether he is not looking down on the others, reminding everyone that large clans have resources that solo players do not. The same orange-haired player points out that he is also a solo player, and that there is no need to insult others. The blue-haired player apologizes, but states that he will soon become a clanmate of Devil Darkness. Elsewhere, Devil Darkness narrates that he has challenged the test tower many times. He used to come here whenever the guild had no major missions, since the equipment was provided and dungeon essence was just a number to him. He kept trying over and over but still failed, and now, after obtaining explosive key, he is here once again. He then finds himself on the 14th floor of the test tower. It was on this floor that he was defeated 7 times in a row, but this time, he finally makes progress. A notification confirms that he defeated the rank 2 agility specialist. Devil Darkness looks at the floor marker and celebrates having finally passed it. He reflects that after trying for so long, tears stream down his face as he tells himself that he finally made it. The ranking updates, showing Devil Darkness on floor 15, while White Knight and Ye are on floor 14. The blue-haired player points at the screen, praising the power of the Sky Tower guild members. He shouts to the crowd that Sky Tower is the greatest guild of all. With a wide smile, he tells himself that this is very good. But the orange-haired player interrupts him, pointing out that Ye also cleared floor 14 and advanced to floor 15. The blue-haired player is left shocked by the revelation. The ranking updates again, showing Ye also on the 15th floor, leaving only White Knight behind. He tries to brush it off by saying that Ye was just lucky, but starts to wonder whether he should switch sides and root for him. Inside the tower, Liu Ye stands before yet another defeated guardian. He looks at his status and reflects that if he uses all attribute blessings, the challenge becomes very easy. A notification shows that his accumulated reward has increased to over 110,000. With a smile, he calculates that if he keeps this up and clears the tower, he could obtain around 300,000 essence. He realizes that with the reduced level requirement, there is a chance to equip much higher level items and decides to push himself harder. A notification informs him that he is being transported to the 15th floor, and he disappears from the spot. Elsewhere, Devil Darkness notices that he still has 30% of his explosive state left, and that he chose Retaliation Explosion. He believes that with this, he can advance a few more floors and boasts that he defeated White Knight in the end. A notification confirms his arrival at the 15th floor of the test tower. He then declares himself number 1 in the test tower. The guardian of the 15th floor, a level 52 defense specialist, appears before him. Devil Darkness analyzes the opponent, wondering whether his strength and armor exceed 1,000 since he has specialized abilities. A notification informs him that a 3-minute limited challenge is about to begin, and Devil Darkness decides that he cannot be a coward. He prepares to fight, stating that as the number 1 of the tower, he cannot be afraid and will fight until he can no longer endure. He watches the giant guardian, noting that it only has higher strength and armor attributes. Then the opponent leaps into attack, and Devil Darkness refuses to give up without at least fighting. The two clash and exchange a direct punch, but Devil Darkness is defeated in a single blow, and a notification confirms that he has failed the challenge. White Knight's companions shout that Devil Darkness is dead and has failed the challenge, while he advances to the 15th floor. The crowd watches the scoreboard, wondering whether they will be able to advance or if a new record will be set in the tower. The orange-haired player mocks another, questioning whether that is the true power of Sky Tower. Then the blue-haired player reveals that he took the wrong badge, because the guild he is going to join is Sanctuary. He is left speechless before the crowd, realizing the mistake he made. He then wishes White Knight good luck, asking him not to fail and to advance to a higher floor than Ye. In the arena of the 15th floor, Liu Ye and the Guardian exchange a series of strikes and blocks. He blocks an attack as the HP exchange ability of the Armor Specialist Guardian is detailed. Liu Ye wonders whether he can break the opponent's healing ability, since after almost 2 minutes of attacking, he still has not managed to stop it. He leaps over the enemy and attacks, wondering what the special conditions are to break the ability. Dodging the Guardian's blows, he continues to question what those conditions might be. With only 2.5 minutes left on the timer, he realizes that there is not enough time to defeat the opponent with his current abilities. He then decides that he has no choice but to use the blessing of knowledge-based strength, and his attributes increase by 1,000. Meanwhile, White Knight is also on the 15th floor. He appears in the arena, and his current status is displayed on the screen. White Knight lets out a sigh before starting. He states that he barely lost any HP to get there, and that advancing a few more floors should not be a problem. Before him appears the Guardian of the 15th floor, a level 53 strength specialist. His specialized ability, Attack Power Explosion, doubles the power of his next strike. The 5-minute limited challenge begins, and White Knight positions himself for battle. He understands that he cannot take it easy like on the previous floor, since he needs to defeat it within 5 minutes. So he decides that he has to go all out and leaps into the attack. Elsewhere, Liu Ye breathes heavily, with his knowledge-based strength partially depleted. He finally understands that he was not fast enough, as he needed to attack 3 times in 1 second to break the Guardian's ability. Liu Ye realizes that he cannot focus solely on wisdom, and needs to balance all of his attributes to obtain new abilities. A notification confirms the death of the armor specialist, and grants him a weight proportion reward. He is surprised by what the notification reveals. While wondering whether the weight proportion of the reward increases after the 15th floor, he is transported to the 16th floor. In the lobby, players shout that he won, calling him crazy and wondering where this unknown specialist came from. The crowd in the lobby begins to chatter excitedly about the feat. The orange-haired player comments with a smile that elite guild players are not special, and that solo players are stronger. His blue-haired companion looks at him with irritation. Then the scoreboard updates, showing that White Knight has also reached the 16th floor, tying with Ye. The blue-haired player points at the screen, saying that this is the true power of an elite player, and that the finale will decide who is stronger. But the scoreboard shows the word defeated over White Knight's name. His supporter stares at the screen with wide eyes. Other spectators are confused, wondering why he failed the moment he reached the 16th floor. Furious, the blue-haired player throws his badges onto the ground and gives up on elite players. He shouts to the crowd that solo players are the strongest and should never be looked down on. Then he starts jumping and cheering for Ye, while others criticize him for switching sides so quickly. The scene returns to 1 minute earlier, on the 16th floor. White Knight breathes heavily with his HP and knowledge-based strength already low. He states that the fight on the 15th floor was so difficult that he nearly died, but fortunately managed to defeat the opponent. Facing the new Guardian, a wisdom specialist, he sighs and says that this must be his limit. But he cheers up when he realizes that he got the easier opponent and celebrates his luck. White Knight believes that the system wants him to advance to the 17th floor and decides to go all out. The Guardian of the 16th floor prepares for the fight. He manages to dodge one of the opponent's attacks. But the Guardian strikes him with a sharp key enhancement and a dodge bar. White Knight is caught off guard by the blow. He is hit by the attack and wonders how the Guardian can have the same ability as him. Then, a notification informs him that he has died, failed the challenge, and lost all of his accumulated rewards. Liu Ye finds himself on the 16th floor facing the next Guardian. The opponent is a level 57 sensitivity specialist, with the ability to foresee danger. He realizes that this ability would work very well with his own, allowing him to avoid fatal attacks. So he decides that in his next equipment upgrade, he will focus on the sense attribute to obtain this ability. But for now, he leaps toward the opponent, determined to defeat him first. Liu Ye concentrates on the battle ahead. He attacks with a sword strike, but the Guardian dodges easily. The sensitivity specialist continues to evade his rapid attacks. Liu Ye finally lands a hit, stating that his high-level warrior title gives him double the opponent's speed. And if that is not enough, he uses his knowledge-based strength to increase all his attributes. Now with a speed 6 times greater than the Guardian's, he launches the final attack. A notification confirms the defeat of the sensitivity specialist and shows the new accumulated reward. He is then transported to the 17th floor. With a smile, he concludes that floor Guardians are easy, except for the final one, which will have all abilities. Liu Ye faces the next challenge, determined to save his knowledge-based strength to completely clear the tower. The Guardian of the 17th floor reveals itself as a level 57 defense specialist with 3 specialized abilities. In the Resurrection Room, Devil Darkness tells White Knight that it seems he lost to him once again. White Knight then asks which floor he managed to clear, since he passed the 15th. Devil Darkness laughs and admits that he advanced higher, declaring him the number 1 of the tower for now. With a slight smile, White Knight suggests that they share information as they did before. He then directly asks him how he died. Devil Darkness stands up and explains that he was defeated by the stacking effect of specialized attribute abilities. White Knight does not understand and asks what he means by stacking effect. The other player clarifies that he was killed by a rank 3 defense specialist. He explains that the Guardian's combination of abilities can remove all of the opponent's equipment, reducing their defense to 0. White Knight continues listening to the explanation in silence. Devil Darkness concludes that the stacking effect is extremely powerful and wonders what would happen if all abilities were combined. Elsewhere, Liu Ye questions the 3 specialized attribute abilities. He prepares for the fight, stating that he can handle the situation and will only use his blessing if necessary. Then Liu Ye and the Guardian face each other, mirroring the same combat stance. Liu Ye and the Guardian leap toward each other for an aerial clash. Their blades collide in midair in an imminent impact. Then the barrier and attack power explosion abilities activate, and a notification confirms that all of his equipment has been removed. He suddenly finds himself wearing only casual clothes in the middle of the arena. Completely surprised, Liu Ye wonders what just happened. He manages to block the Guardian's next strike, which advances with a restraint. The force of the impact cracks the ground beneath his feet as he struggles to hold the attack. But the opponent activates the barrier and HP exchange abilities. A notification informs him that his HP will be reduced by 99% because it is lower than the Guardian's. His eyes widen at the terrifying revelation. Liu Ye then shouts the word blessing, and a notification confirms the increase of his attributes and the removal of negative effects. He uses a normal Kai boost, and his power is amplified even further. With a single devastating blow, he sends the Guardian flying, dealing massive damage. The opponent survives with little life remaining as the barrier maximizes his defense for 10 seconds. Seeing that the enemy is still alive, Liu Ye decides to attack without stopping. After a sequence of strikes, a notification confirms the defeat of the defense specialist and displays his final reward. Liu Ye considers himself careless as he is transported to the 18th floor of the test tower. He had to use the restraint skill to turn the tide against a specialized Guardian. Then Liu Ye decides to press forward, determined to clear the test tower, and considers summoning the Wyvern Snake if things go wrong. An information window shows the details of his weapon and the Wyvern Snake's soul. He then notices that part of the description in the status window is grayed out. A notification informs him that the Wyvern Snake refuses to obey, and he wonders what else it could desire. The Guardian of the 18th floor is introduced as a rank 3 wisdom specialist. Liu Ye and the Guardian face each other at a distance in the arena. He decides not to worry about the Wyvern Snake, planning to save his final ability for the Guardian of the 21st floor. In the Resurrection Room, Devil Darkness tells Liu Ye that he died to a rank 3 wisdom specialist. He then expresses his surprise, explaining that the wisdom specialist also used Kai. Devil Darkness cannot believe that a wisdom specialist could also possess Kai. Another player explains that rank 3 Guardians have specialized abilities, while Devil Darkness calculates that the enemy must have 8 times their knowledge-based strength. He concludes that the tower was designed to never be fully cleared, since the Guardian not only has special abilities, but also Ki. Back in the arena, Liu Ye positions himself to face the specialist Guardian. The Guardian reveals that he needs the barrier skill to stack his other abilities. Then Liu Ye advances, determined to uncover the answers by facing the Guardian of the 21st floor. The blades of the two collide in a clash mid-air. The Guardian prepares to use a blessing on all of his attributes. Liu Ye carefully observes his opponent's actions. The enemy attacks him using a restraint and resets his cooldown. He realizes that the Guardian has just used a blessing, a key skill identical to his own. Liu Ye decides that he must defeat him immediately and points his weapon. 2 notifications confirm damage blocking and a massive increase in his attack power. His shot hits the Guardian, activating the containment effect. But he realizes that the enemy's restraint skill has been activated. The Guardian then resets his skills and uses the blessing again. During the 5 seconds of containment, Liu Ye is struck by multiple attacks. He finds himself completely suppressed by the opponent's increased power. Unable to summon the Wyvern Snake, he searches for another skill he can use. Liu Ye blocks the Guardian's multiple attacks. He then realizes that he has no remaining skills to reverse the situation. A system window appears, asking whether he wishes to destroy the pendulum. He then threatens the Wyvern Snake, stating that he will destroy the item if it does not help him. The containment countdown continues. Since it does not help him, he decides that he has no other choice. But at the moment he is about to destroy the item, the Wyvern Snake agrees to help him under one condition. The restraint ends and Liu Ye accepts the deal. He stands up and pushes the Guardian back. The opponent falls but quickly gets back up. A massive serpent appears behind Liu Ye, looming over the Guardian. A system notification details the massive increase in his attributes and the activation of multiple weakening territories. The Wyvern Snake explains that its power and abilities are being transferred to him. Liu Ye advances and attacks the Guardian once again. He then uses the same containment skill against his opponent. Liu Ye realizes that his opponent is far weaker due to the territory effect. He then tells the Guardian that using restraint will only delay his death by 10 seconds. With conviction, Liu Ye declares that his victory is inevitable. The duration of the Guardian's containment decreases with each passing second. He defeats the rank 3 Wisdom Specialist and a reward notification is displayed. White Knight suggests that they leave since they have achieved their goal of passing the 14th floor. Devil Darkness agrees with the suggestion. As they walk, Devil Darkness comments that the players outside will be surprised, but White Knight says that this is expected since they broke the record. He then adds that they deserve to be admired and praised. Devil Darkness agrees and invites him to greet their fans. The two then walk together confidently toward the exit. But when they arrive, they suddenly stop. A large crowd is gathered in the plaza, but no one looks at them. Devil Darkness wonders why everyone is ignoring them. White Knight then looks at the ranking board. He sees that first place now belongs to a player named Ye, who is on the 19th floor. In shock, he draws Devil Darkness's attention to the board, asking if he is seeing things. Devil Darkness asks him to wait and looks to confirm the information. He then shouts, confirming that the rookie really advanced to the 19th floor. Meanwhile, Liu Ye walks along a random street in Mushu City. Two players talk about a rookie named Ye reaching the 19th floor on his first attempt. In another group, a player updates the others, saying that Ye has already cleared the 19th floor and is now on the 20th. Silly Kai joins the conversation and reveals that Ye is the older brother of the goddess of the mirrored secret zone. The ranking board confirms that Ye has reached the 20th floor, and the crowd wonders how he became so strong so quickly. Devil Darkness observes that this means he defeated the rank 3 defense specialist and the guardian with Kai. White Knight then questions how it is possible for someone to pass such insane difficulty. Another player approaches, stating that solo players also have their own specialists. He smiles at the opportunity to show off in front of White Knight and Devil Darkness. Then, the player turns to the crowd and starts laughing exaggeratedly. But a sudden announcement informs everyone that Ye has advanced to the 21st floor, shocking them all. Players in the crowd wonder where this rookie could have come from. Silly Kai then shouts to everyone that Ye is the brother-in-law of the players from the mirrored secret zone. Others are confused by the statement and ask for an explanation while looking at a photo. He displays the image on a screen, and the surrounding players are captivated. One player then corrects it, shouting that Ye is everyone's brother-in-law, and the crowd begins to echo the same word. The crowd shouts in unison, wishing good luck to their brother-in-law. The Guardian of the 21st floor is a rank 3 specialist with mastery in all attributes and multiple abilities. Liu Ye uses the regeneration of knowledge-based strength to prepare for the battle. He then evaluates his current status before the final confrontation. A notification informs him that his rewards have been increased, adding +1 to all attributes. He realizes that the final reward does not contain only the reversion orb and dungeon essence. On the final floor, he understands that the weight proportion of attributes will be +2, which will increase his combat rank. He then prepares to defeat the Guardian and obtain the rewards. Liu Ye charges at the Guardian, because even with lower attributes, he has a superior weight ratio. He then blocks a powerful attack from his opponent. Even with his strongest abilities on cooldown, the young man continues the fight. His goal is to survive long enough to use his blessing once more and take control of the battle. He analyzes the details of his abilities to confirm his plan. Liu Ye advances, declaring that he can defeat him, and their blades clash against the Guardians. But even with all the enhancements, he cannot find a single opening in the enemy's defense. The exchange of blows continues as the remaining time of the blessing drops to 40 seconds. With only 20 seconds left, he leaps into an aerial attack. The battle intensifies during the final 10 seconds of his ability. The Guardian advances at the exact moment Liu Ye's enhancement expires. He manages to defend against the attack at the last instant. Immediately, he activates the blessing on all of his attributes once again. A system notification confirms the massive increase in power across his attributes. When he steps on the ground, his strength is so great that it cracks the entire surface around him. Liu Ye declares victory, stating that he now only needs 1 minute to eliminate him. Then, the Guardian also activates his own blessing, surprising the young man. The creature confirms that all of its attributes have also been increased. Liu Ye stares at him with wide eyes. He questions how the Guardian also has his cooldown reduction ability. Stepping back, he realizes the disadvantage he is in. He panics as he remembers that the opponent possesses all of his abilities, including those he has not yet used. The Guardian prepares for combat with his blade in hand. Liu Ye wonders aloud how he can defeat him now. He then grits his teeth, regaining his determination. The Guardian leaps into the air, launching his attack at the young man. But Liu Ye believes that he still has a chance if he can drag the fight out for 5 minutes. His plan is to keep dodging to maintain distance between them. The opponent descends with an unavoidable attack, but Liu Ye is confident that he can endure the blow. He then advances to counterattack the Guardian with a vertical slash. Liu Ye's attack shatters one of the Guardian's shields. He then wonders what just happened. The Guardian uses his last ability to create a barrier and increase his agility. With the impact, another one of Liu Ye's shields breaks. After losing 2 defenses, he calculates that he can block 4 more attacks, but does not know what to do afterward. He retreats to put distance between himself and the opponent, while his remaining shields protect him. Even with his advantages, he cannot see a way to win, and feels that he is merely delaying the inevitable. He then comes to the conclusion that there seems to be no way out, but the memory of the great reward for clearing the tower reignites his will to fight. Victory would allow him to become the strongest player in the entire Yuan world. Suddenly, a system notification appears, and he reads the word architect. An idea arises, and he realizes that he might be able to win if he uses this ability to change the rules of the fight. He stares at the Guardian advancing toward him. With no other option, he prepares to put his new plan into action. Liuya runs and asks the architect ability to let him defeat the Guardian of the 21st floor. Irritated, he questions what exactly the ability can alter or modify. He then remembers that the instruction the first time he used Architect was change the rules. From this, he deduces that the rules refer to the laws established in the game world, not the rules of the battle itself. His gaze becomes focused and determined with this new realization. He faces the Guardian, understanding that the fundamental rules of the game, such as skill cooldowns, are the laws he can alter. Liuya prepares himself, now knowing exactly which rule he needs to change in order to win. He orders the architect to modify all of his skills so they have no cooldown, and the system confirms success. With the notification that cooldown times have been disabled, he smiles while holding a miniature image of the Guardian. He then repeatedly activates the blessing on his attributes, taking advantage of the 10-second duration of the effect. The notifications show his power increasing exponentially with each passing second. An immense wave of power erupts from Liuya and fills the entire area. The system notifies him that he has reached the limit of 200,000 in his attributes, but he considers that more than enough. He raises his sword to attack, ordering the Guardian to die. He then delivers a powerful strike against the Guardian. After 1 minute, a system notification details all the rewards he received for clearing the tower. Outside, the crowd celebrates the news that he has finally cleared the test tower. A hurried man pulls his companion toward the tower's exit portal. A notification confirms Liuya's transport out of the tower, and he celebrates having truly succeeded. He clenches his fist, relieved that the cooldown of his architect ability ended at the exact right moment. As he is transported, he understands why the area of madness requires so much computational power. He recognizes that his victory was thanks to the architect, and now he can finally explore the area of madness. He turns when he hears someone calling him brother-in-law. He finds himself surrounded by a crowd of cheering players, wondering why so many people are there. 3 players at the front of the crowd shout his new nickname with enthusiasm. Completely confused, he cannot understand what is happening around him. He stands frozen before the excited crowd, remembering that his younger sister would not like this at all. On a street in Mushu City, people comment that the Yuan world has already become the number 2 in the world. One of the men wonders whether no one will take control of the situation. Liuya analyzes the reversion orb, which allows a player to be reborn with their data saved. Now he can explore the area of madness, but he decides not to rely completely on the orb. He needs to test whether the architect ability can alter the group limit restriction of dungeons. But for now, he has another priority. He contacts the artificial intelligence, Wyvern Snake, and offers to honor his promise so that it can roam freely. If he did not know the secret of the game, he would believe that his artificial intelligence was simply very advanced. He then asks it to take him to the parallel world, as he feels a connection to that place. Wyvern Snake agrees to help, but in exchange asks for something to ensure its safety, offering a specialized ability as a reward. The possibility of obtaining any specialized ability surprises him. With the image of the Guardian in his mind, he quickly agrees to the deal. In a weapons and equipment shop, he asks what needs to be purchased. He trusts that Wyvern Snake's help will make any expenditure of dungeon essence worthwhile. His face becomes serious as a system interface is initiated before him. On the purchase screen, Liuya is shocked to see that the high-rank module costs 300,000 essences, but he was already prepared for this. Wyvern Snake explains that to descend directly, he needs a physical medium, or his body will be destroyed. He then decides to buy the high-rank module, and the system notification confirms the successful purchase. Holding the object, he asks what the next step is, and the artificial intelligence instructs him to shape it into a ring and equip it. Upon putting on the ring, he speculates that Wyvern Snake's description was previously grayed out because he did not have enough essence. A vision of an immense white serpent appears before him. Liuya shakes his head, refusing to believe that such a powerful monster could be so reckless, but Wyvern Snake reminds him to fulfill his promise. 3 hours later, he finds himself in the area of chaotic disorder, standing before the entrance of a random dungeon. His success in reaching level 60 and obtaining the specialized ability now depends on using Architect to change the dungeon entry rules. With his arms raised, he celebrates having successfully altered the rule. Now with the path clear, he prepares to grind until level 60. He then runs toward the dungeon portal. Already inside the dungeon, he knows that because he entered alone, the reward will be reduced. But with the enhancement of his title, he can receive the normal reward and level up quickly. 3 days later, Liuya celebrates finally reaching level 60. He also upgraded his equipment with new Imperial Souls and engraving orbs. A system screen displays all of his updated attributes and abilities. Another notification details his new key abilities and warns him about the world's computational power limit. He questions the restriction, realizing that he can no longer gain experience in dungeons after reaching level 60. At the Mushu Hotel, he thinks that the same notification will appear if he tries to upgrade his equipment. Sitting in his room, Wyvern Snake asks which specialized ability he desires. He decides that the barrier ability is the best choice to combine with his other combat techniques. The artificial intelligence instructs him to agree to any notification that appears, and he accepts. He hesitates as he would be at its mercy, but decides that nothing ventured, nothing gained, and agrees. After being pulled by a vortex, he lands in a new and unknown environment. He remains alert while analyzing the surroundings. Facing a desolate landscape with a violent storm, he wonders if that is the heart of Wyvern Snake's territory. Something flies past him at high speed. A massive creature crashes into the ground, raising a curtain of dust and debris. Liu Ye stands up amid the wreckage, expressing his frustration with the situation. The gigantic serpent moves among the clouds above him. Wyvern Snake asks whether he fell from a simple movement and orders him to stand up. He faces the creature's true form, realizing that the pressure it emits is the strongest he has ever felt. After being informed that he must defeat it to obtain barrier or remain trapped forever, he accepts the challenge. Liu Ye then advances into battle, leaping toward the creature. 6 days later, a notification congratulates him on acquiring the barrier ability, and he receives a message from the leader of the new order. At Liu Ye's home, the young man gazes out the window at the city during the night. With 7 days remaining until something happens, he recalls spending the past few days fighting Wyvern Snake in its spiritual space until he was finally able to fight back. He then celebrates his victory and the acquisition of barrier, which, when combined with another ability, allows him to deduce the strength of other players. Liu Ye believes that he is now very strong and can become one of the best players in the Wan world. Morning dawns over the city. Then the young man gets ready and buttons his shirt. He leaves his room and peeks at what is outside. Liu Ye enters the living room and sees his sister with her back turned, holding a shopping bag. She turns around and says that she has prepared all the necessary things. With a smile, he agrees and tells her that they should go. His sister looks at him for a moment. Then she places the shopping bag on the table. The young woman steps closer to him and asks why he buttoned the top button, reminding him that their mother always told him not to do that. She continues, saying that he looks more lively with the top button undone. Liu Ye simply averts his gaze. With a smile, his sister watches him.